Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. The Glendale City Council.
Mike?
Again, welcome to the October 10th, 2006 meeting. The Glendale City Council being called to order at 6:05 p.m. May we have a roll call for the City Council?
Council members Manukian.
Here.
Najarian.
Here.
Quintero.
Here.
Yusefian.
Here.
Mayor Weaver.
Here. Flag salute tonight will be led by Councilmember Quintero and the invocation by City Clerk Hardy Kasakian. Please stand.
Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The world-renowned humanitarian Mother Teresa said that love cannot remain by itself. It has no meaning. Love has to be put into action, and that action is service. Last weekend marked many events around the country to raise awareness about cancer, including Glendale's very successful Relay for Life at the sports complex. We also have the Kiwanis Duck Splash coming up October 21st, and countless other events that raise money and awareness about those who are not as fortunate as others. Tonight I ask everyone to join us in a simple prayer as we pray for the volunteers of our city, the individuals who give of themselves, their time and effort to better the lives of others. Their love knows no boundaries and their contributions are priceless. We're grateful for all that they have and will accomplish through their selfless actions. May their love for humanity burn strong and bright and guide us towards a more compassionate and peaceful world. Amen.
Thank you. May we have your report?
The agenda for the October 10, 2006 regular meeting of the Glendale City Council was posted on Thursday, October 5th, 2006 on the bulletin board outside City Hall.
And with that, next please.
Next is presentations and appointments. At 3A is agenda preview for the meeting of October 17, 2006.
And the next is going to be Fire Prevention Week. Get Sparky located. Thank you. Mr. McFall.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. There are a few items to bring to council's and the community's attention for next week. On the Glendale Redevelopment Agency meeting, there are three business items. The first is the first amended and restated disposition and development agreement and declaration of reciprocal covenants and conditions and restrictions and easements for the Town Center project. I had to practice saying that.
That was a mouthful.
For the Americana at Brand project, there's a number of actions that will be related to that. Secondly, the Director of Development Services will be providing a report on the Stage 1 design review for a proposed mixed-use project located at, at 524 through 550 West Colorado Street, including a proposed residential project located at 544 through 552 West Elk Street. Again, a number of actions relating to that project. And then lastly, on the redevelopment agency, Stage 1 and Stage 2 design review for proposed commercial center project located at 5500 through 5520 San Fernando Road. On the Glendale City Council agenda, the Director of Administrative Services will be providing a report on the utility users tax exemption for low-income individuals with disabilities. This report has already been made to council. This is coming back with council comments and an ordinance for introduction. Secondly, there will be the Director of Administrative Services providing a returned report on the adjustments to the adopted 2006-7 budget, in particular as it relates to the Glendale Water and Power budget. And then lastly, there will be a hearing on a proposed ordinance amending Title 30 of the Glendale Municipal Code relating to density bonus for affordable housing projects.
Thank you. Okay, and we're going to take one that's not on the agenda, Fire Prevention Week. And I told the individual in Sparky that we would get them in here early because it's kind of hot inside that costume. Sparky, come forth and I'll read the proclamation. Boy, I bet that's hot. It's a good thing you're not here in August. You're doing good.
It's getting hotter.
Hi, Sparky. Yeah, I'll read the proclamation here. Whereas many more home fires start in the kitchen than anywhere else, and cooking equipment is involved in over 100,000 reported home fires each year, And whereas the number of reported home fires could be greatly reduced if citizens paid more attention when they cooked and followed simple fire safety rules, and whereas public safety is a top priority in Glendale, and awareness of simple safety practices can help lower our local fire death and injury rates, and whereas working smoke detectors on every level of a home fire escape plans, and regular fire drills in the home have proved to save lives, and whereas the Fire Prevention Week 2006 theme, Prevent Cooking Fires, Watch What You Heat, is an important reminder for everyone. Now therefore I, Dave Weaver, Mayor of the City of Glendale, proclaim the week of October 8th through the 14th, 2006 as Fire Prevention Week. I call upon the people of Glendale to remember the Fire Prevention Week 2006 caution, watch what you heat, and urge all citizens to heed the advice to install smoke detectors and plan and practice fire drills in the home. Mr.
Very good.
Manukian.
It is my pleasure to present the proclamation on behalf of the mayor and the council to Sparky. Sparky, you don't want to shake hands? Thank you. That's a strong handshake. There you go, Chief. And I'm sure you'll tell us about all the fire prevention that we can do at home.
Absolutely.
There you go.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Sparky's can't speak, I know.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, Mr. Starbird, and city staff, thank you for taking the time out of your agenda here to recognize the proclamation this week of Fire Prevention Week, October 8th through 14th. The theme this year is Prevent Cooking Fires, Watch What You Heat. 70% of all home fires are cooking fires, and usually that's as a result of unattended cooking. So simply paying attention and not leaving your cooking unattended will have a huge impact on the reduction of fire and life loss within our city. This week for Fire Prevention Week, we are holding fire drills in all of our schools, as well as our Engine 25 visited Barnes & Nobles today and had a reading there and participated with that with some of the citizens of Glendale. And also, we're having a fire fact today with all the fourth graders in the city of Glendale this week in the schools. So with that, I thank you. And I have Truck 21 here today with me in recognition of Fire Prevention Week as well. Sparky, Chief Arianis, and I think is Chief Creasy here. And Doug Nichols, our fire forester. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Sparky's applauding because he's going to get out of that suit. Have a good evening, Sparky. Okay, how about 3B?
At 3B is proclamation designating October 2006 as Domestic Violence Awareness Month, and October 15th through the 21st, 2006 as YWCA and the Commission on the Status of Women Week Without Violence.
And I'll be presenting the proclamation to Ms. Brooke Bentley Moore from the YWCA Board of Directors, and Lena Zodian from Vice Chair of the Commission on Status of Women. And it reads as follows. Whereas the Week Without Violence is a violence prevention campaign led by the Glendale YWCA and the City of Glendale Commission on the Status of Women, and whereas in the City of Glendale there have been at least 3,230 reported domestic violence calls to the Glendale Police Department between the years of 2000 through 2005, and untold numbers of unreported domestic violent incidents. And whereas the City of Glendale experienced 2 domestic violence-related homicides in addition to 3 domestic homicides in the year 2005, and whereas the Week Without Violence provides a series of local forums designed to encourage residents to discuss issues of violence and to develop collaborative strategies to eliminate it. The Week Without Violence encourages and challenges all residents to visualize our community free from violence and to actively work towards making that vision a reality. And whereas the Week Without Violence campaign involves all members of our community, children, youth, women, and men, and focuses on building practical and sustainable alternatives to violence through activities and events at the Glendale YWCA, schools, local community organizations, neighborhoods, and workplaces. Taking this opportunity to work for the well-being and safety of the residents of Glendale. Now, therefore, I, Dave Weaver, Mayor of the City of Glendale, do hereby proclaim the month of October 2006 as Domestic Violence Awareness Month and the week of October 15th through the 21st, 2006, as YWCA and the Commission on the Status of Women Week Without Violence. Mr. Secretary.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. These are two great organizations. One is our own commission, and the other one is YWCA, who's been doing a wonderful job for many, many years. So it gives me great pleasure to give you the proclamation. Thank you.
Oh,
You also have one for
yeah,
the
I haven't read it yet.
Soroptimist.
I haven't read it yet.
Okay.
You're ahead of it. You're ahead of it.
Thank you, Mayor Weaver, and the City Council and staff members. On behalf of the YWCA of Glendale, I'm delighted to accept this proclamation. Every 15 seconds, somewhere in this country, a woman is abused by a man she knows. The sheer volume of this, the sheer size of it, can feel overwhelming, and yet silence about it is literally deadly. The YWCA of Glendale joins with YWCAs nationwide in bringing this topic to communities around the nation. We have always, at the Glendale YWCA, been staunch champions of the women and children who have been victims of abuse through our shelters here, and we've had wonderful support from the city in helping these victims. And it's our real pleasure to be collaborating with the Commission on the Status of Women this year with the planning of this event, the Week Without Violence. It will be starting on the 15th with a candlelight vigil at the Glendale YWCA, 6 o'clock in the evening, which will last for about 2 hours. Speeches from various public figures, politicians, and actually some victims themselves. And it's going to be a very moving remembrance of those who have been victims of abuse. And again, we're delighted to be doing this with the Commission and have an entire week of events that will be showcasing what we can do as a community to begin to stop this epidemic. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor, council members, staff. On behalf of the Commission, along with my Commission members, Naha Bedian and Paula Divine, I accept and thank the council members for this proclamation. As you all may know, that domestic violence and prevention and education of domestic violence was one of our top priorities. Last year, we introduced a program of Hands and Words Are Not for Hurting that touched 22,000 students in the GOSC. And this year, last week, we introduced a panel of 5 speakers, and the title was Empowering Immigrant Women, that deals with domestic violence. And we are proud and very delighted to partner with local women organizations in Glendale, along with the YWCA, in celebrating the victims of domestic violence. And we are happy to collaborate with the Y in celebrating the week without violence, in the hope that it's not going to just be a week, it's going to be much more than that. And we thank our local Glendale Police Department, along with the Y, and we're going to make the difference, all of us collaborating together to have a community with less violence, not only domestic violence, but violence with all its aspects. So thank you.
Thank you.
If any of my commissioners want to say something.
Thank you very much. And following on with that, there's another group in this town that does an awful lot in this same area. And that's the Soroptimists. I asked Mr. Quintero to present another proclamation to the Soroptimists, and Elaine Aguilar is going to be accepting on behalf of the Soroptimists. Second Vice President, eh?
Correct.
Moving up. And it reads, whereas October is National End Domestic Violence Month, and whereas domestic violence is a serious and violent social problem that exists in all economic segments of society, in all cultures, and in all countries of the world, and whereas the Soroptimist Workplace campaign to end domestic violence is an ongoing Soroptimist effort to promote awareness, advocacy, and action, and that Soroptimists are in a position worldwide to educate everyone, especially women, they have a right to feel safe and to live free from violence. And whereas Seroptimus in Camino Real region launched a region-wide campaign to provide information about services available for prevention of domestic violence, now therefore I, Dave Weaver, Mayor of the City of Glendale, do hereby proclaim the month of October 2006 as End Domestic Violence Month, with special recognition to Seroptimus of Camino Real region for their various contributions to the many communities for advancement of human rights and dissemination of information.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and council members.
Thank you.
Thank you. Again, I'm Elaine Aguilar with Seroptimus International. This evening I have Brittany Bellotti with me, one of our newest Seroptimus members. We thank you for this proclamation. We also wanted to let the City Council know that, similar to previous years, we will be again printing the purple cards that have information on them to assist victims of domestic violence. These cards, as you're aware, are placed in public places, in particular ladies' restrooms, throughout the city, and basically provide information and emergency contact information. So if someone sees one of those cards, feel free to put one in your wallet or purse and give it to someone in need who you know might need that information. So we thank you very much for your support, and we thank you very much for this proclamation.
Thank you. What is next, please?
At 3C is at 3D is a selection of nominating panel to replace Ms. Milen Apanyan, resigned, for the Arts and Culture Commission. Councilmember Chair Najarian, Councilmember Quintero.
Next.
At 3E is selection of nominating panel to reappoint or replace Ms. Lena Bazoyan and Ms. Carla Curling, whose terms will expire December 12, 2006, for the Commission on the Status of Women. Councilmember Chair Quintero and Mayor Weaver. And at 3F is selection of nominating panel to replace Mr. Richard Diradurian, whose term will expire December 19, 2006, for the Building and Fire Board of Appeals. Mayor Chair Weaver, Councilmember Yusefian.
Thank you. Are there any other presentations, appointments? Guess not. What's next, please?
Next is City Council or staff comments.
I have one. On future agenda, Ms. Starbird, I'd like to have staff return with information regarding the development of a local tobacco retail licensing ordinance similar to the model California ordinance aimed at illegal tobacco sales to minors. A recent study in Glendale shown 25% of the establishments that do sell cigarettes do so to minors. And we have no ordinance. Burbank has, and I believe Pasadena and Los Angeles. So we better get an ordinance on the books, too. Mr. Nukian?
Yes, I would like to take a minute to congratulate everyone that participated in Relay for Life. My apologies, I could not be there as much as I wanted to. However, I was there in thoughts and I know that it was a successful event. They're almost at 150,000, I believe. Are they going? Am I jumping the gun? Are they going to announce it today? Okay. Then they're almost there. More than last year. It was around 110,000. This year is about 150,000. I want to congratulate everyone that put in so many hours and so much hard work to make it come true. I want to congratulate everyone that was up there, and a job well done. We look forward to next year's event.
Thank you. Any other comments? Mr.
I actually have an announcement, Honorable Mayor, council members, and staff. Amidst all this clutter on my desk down here, you'll see a stuffed dog as well as one right by your gavel. And that is a reminder to everyone that the annual, and you can hold the poster up, yes, that is a reminder that the annual rabies clinic will be held this coming Thursday, October 12th, from 7 to 8:30 p.m. The clinic will be held at two locations, the city parking structure at 650 East Wilson, right here by City Hall, and fire station number 28, 4410 New York Avenue in La Crescenta. Rabies vaccinations for dogs will only be $6. The 6-in-1 vaccination will be $14, and the Bordetella is $11. For cats, rabies will be $6, and the 4-in-1 vaccination will be $14. Dogs must be 4 months or older, and cats 3 months or older. Please be reminded that all dogs must be on a leash and cats inside an enclosed container. We encourage all pet owners to really take advantage of this opportunity.
That's cool.
And just to let you know that 2 years ago we vaccinated.
This is ridiculous.
2 years ago, we vaccinated approximately 162 dogs at both clinics, and last year we vaccinated 170 dogs. We hope that we will increase that, and we encourage everyone to bring their dogs if their dogs haven't gotten their vaccinations. Bring Sparky, fire department, if you want. I don't know if we have enough vaccines for he or she, and that's it.
Always have it on my campaign poster, now you do that. Okay, anything else on, Mr. Yusefian?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. One thing, actually, as I looked at the list of agenda items that the council had asked to put on the agenda, I did not see one of my requests that I had asked to put on the agenda. I hope the city manager will put that back on the agenda, which is to discuss creation of a reserve program for the fire department. And also in the process of doing that, ways of trying to figure out to reduce the $500,000 overtime budget. I got a list of all that during the study sessions we had. I think we should kind of look at that as I went through that list. There are a lot of questions that I have. I think we need to try to figure out a way to pare down that $5 million overtime budget. The other thing that I wanted to discuss, Mr. Mayor, it was nice seeing you at Relay for Life with your adopted dog, which I drove up the hill and I saw you. You were walking all the way up the hill.
No place to park. I had to park down the residential area.
Yeah, well, I saw you coming
But
up
I need
the
the
hill.
exercise.
I went, man, I can't believe he's climbing that hill with that dog. Nevertheless, I thought it was a pretty good turnout. Unfortunately, I think park staff had made some error of allowing some of the games to take place, which they were not supposed to, so consequently parking was impossible to find. Hopefully next year there'll be a nice big red flag on the computer that says it's Relay for Life, do not schedule soccer games.
If it's in the same place.
If it's the same place. So we won't have that. Nevertheless, there were a lot of people there. We had a good time. It was very cold. This time, I think it was colder than last year. But I stuck it on, and I think Mr. Najarian also stayed. I think his kids went home, had an excuse, but they went home and they left the dad alone.
No, just one.
Just one? Oh, so you ended up with one of them. Okay. But we stayed, and I thought it was a good thing. And Mr. Starbird made s'mores. And s'mores. And I thought it was a great thing. And that's one thing that I think maybe Parks and Rec should start doing is a couple of times a year maybe to open up their facilities for parents to take their kids up there for some type of a camp out. Because we found that there were a lot of kids there. They really enjoyed it. And this is a program that we should start bringing it back. I understand we used to have it. We kind of stopped it. So we need to reestablish it in the summertime so we could do that again. So it was a great time. I had a good time. I enjoyed it. And thank you for Relay for Life to giving us the opportunity to raise money to save some people. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
That reminds me, I had 4 events that day, and finished it off with Oktoberfest, and that was great again. Nice crowd. I didn't even have a beer. But I told the audience, I'm getting out of here because the UCLA game is almost over, and all those Bruins are going to come up. No, last Saturday. They're going to come up from the Rose Bowl because they were winning, and they're going to drink a lot of beer. So. That was after I made a pitch for USC and got a lot of applause because we struggled, but we won. Anyway, it was a great event up there, too. Okay, what is next, please?
Next is consent items, including minutes. The following are routine and may be acted upon by one motion. Any member of council or the audience requesting separate consideration may do so by making such request before a motion is proposed.
I have no cards that I know of.
Mayor, move consent calendar.
Second. except for 5A, I will abstain because
With that abstention on 5A by Mr. Menuchyan, roll call.
Council members Manukian,
yes.
Najarian,
Yes.
Quintero,
Yes.
Yusefian.
Aye.
Mayor Weaver.
Aye. Next, please.
Next is oral communication. Discussion is limited to items not a part of this agenda. Each speaker is allowed 5 minutes. Council may question or respond to the speaker, but there will be no debate or decision. City manager may refer the matter to the appropriate department for investigation and report.
First speaker, Dr. Richard Espiritu, followed by Margaret Habib.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, City Council, staff, and the audience. I am Dr. Richard Espiritu. I moved into this town in 1965 when the Glendale Police Department enforced the sundown laws. I started to appear in this City Council chambers in September of 2002. That was a very interesting year because the Islamic Republic of Pakistan passed laws regarding ADA, Pakistan. I have appeared in this room speaking on behalf of Americans with disabilities, regardless of age, sex, color, creed, ethnic origin, or economic status. I am here tonight once again to address the issue of the Americans with disabilities and an oversight. The seating assembly for ADA and Title 24, Mr. Yusefian, and under ADA and Title 24, item number 7 states that the width and depth of the seating. That's item number 7. On table 11B1 of Title 24, and also in section 34.33.4 of ADA, it also states a number of requirements. Mr. Garcia, I have pass out. You don't have to write it all out. It's all there.
Don't you know by now that Mr. Espiritu comes well prepared?
I don't want anybody to go. That's for all the city council members also, except for Mr. Yusefian.
I already have my copy in advance.
These talk about the minimum requirements. Seating also addresses the semi-ambulatory individuals, persons who need for seating, minimum requirements, and minimum death requirements under Title 24. Mr. Stewart Tom, your Title 24 expert, provided me with the documents from the city. Mr. Yusefian, Mr. Manukian, there were 3 seats removed from the city council chambers for people with wheelchairs. Unfortunately, that doesn't meet the minimum requirements of Title 24 in ADA. Also, where are the requirements for people with walkers? Those seats up there to my right are for individuals, basically staff. You have a lot of staff members there right now, but people with walkers don't have a place to sit. The second issue that I'd like to talk about is something that happened just recently. 23 days ago, I met with the ADA Compliance Committee regarding 2 issues that I challenged. According to your own guidelines under ADA, you have 15 days to respond to my meeting. I met with staff members. We discussed. I had PowerPoint presentations. And unfortunately, as of today, I have not received a phone call, a letter, so much as by your leave, or you're completely crazy about what you're saying. Mr. Zern was there. I specifically asked him to be at that meeting. And we had a very good discussion with a bunch of different individuals. And to this time, I still have not received any response to that. I'd like to bring to your attention one other issue. ADA was passed and became a law of the land in 1992. That was 16 years ago. Please, gentlemen, at a later date, I'm going to discuss some suggestions that I'd like the City Council to seriously take into consideration to take care of the needs of the peoples with disability. And at a future date, I will even describe to you what ADA considers peoples with disability. But thank you for your time and consideration.
Margaret Habib, followed by Hubert Milano.
Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Yusefian.
Mr. Starbird, a while back when we were going through our City Hall's renovation process, we were going to go ahead and redo the seats in the council chambers. I am assuming at that time we will deal with this Title 24 because according to the code in here, you're supposed to have 33 inches wide and 60 inches deep for each one of these things, and according to code, we're supposed to have 4 of them. I'm assuming that's going to be taken care of at that time?
Absolutely, yes. Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Yusefian, 2 things. One is we're doing the ADA update on the survey, which is just completed, and with that, we waited till that was done to put our construction plan together and come back to you. We had included in our original plan to do the seats and some other cosmetic amenities in here, ceiling, floor, wall covering. In addition to that, we're going to expand it a little based on input we've had from you gentlemen to come back to talk about possibly redoing the dais to make it accessible as well.
On the other part, the issue with people with walkers.
We'll address all of
these type of seatings don't work,
Correct.
especially if they have crutches.
Correct.
You got to have openings on the side so they could actually.
Correct. That's why we are proposing.
I'm assuming you would check on
There's a
those.
couple of options.
Okay.
We initially talked about refurbishing these chairs, but I think our
So
options
at one point, this is going to be dealt with.
Absolutely.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, City Council members. My name is Margaret Habib. I live in Glendale. Mr. Mayor, I have to thank you for your effort to help solve my problem. The police again got off the hook when they told the city's social worker I should tell my psychiatrist. My answer is no. It is my business if I see one or if I take any medicine. I wonder if the police can legally infringe on my privacy by telling anybody I have to tell my psychiatrist. That's an excuse for a cover-up. All my doctors know that I have a report stating that I have chemical sensitivity and fatigue. I like to point out some reasons of my refusal to tell a psychiatrist and feel police should never get off the hook. In 1987, I got mugged and stabbed. Police didn't show up till about 5 minutes after the 4th phone call. On another occasion, once I received 6 phone calls. Each time a beeper was beeping, so I called the police and their beeper was still beeping. I complained, but they never said any word at all, so I hanged up. In 2002, at the ER in Glendale, I complained from musculoskeletal pain, that is bone and muscle pain. At the ER, I was told that I was given something for the pain. Then all of a sudden, 2 husky men came to me and held me down tightly. The nurse came fast and gave me a shot. I was knocked out fast for 24 hours. It happened because the police were insisting on me that I have to take a certain medicine that the police themselves recommended. And sure enough, I was given that medicine without my permission, as I was sedated and put on hold for 72 hours. Also, my medical file disappeared from the post office for 3 times. No one will be interested in in medical files except someone using his or her job to harass and stalk me. Everybody should know what the police can do. I suggest that you go and look for gangs. So for all the above reasons, a psychiatrist has no place. Mr. Mayor, please help stop police surveillance and their torture. Police will never allow me to find a lawyer. Thanks.
Thank you. Herbert Milano, followed by Connie Lingus.
Good evening, Mayor Weaver and members of the City Council and City staff. My name is Herbert Molano. All of us who come here before you generally try to come here with some dignity and proper decorum. Generally, I think all of us aim for that goal. There are times, though, when the information we aim to clarify may make some of the councilmen and some of the staff uncomfortable. And I think that is the nature and the purpose of this oral communication. Last week, Mr. Weaver defended the inquiry he made from the staff with regard to a lifetime medical insurance, and as we interpreted, is medical insurance for himself. According to his explanation, he now pays for coverage provided by the Army Corps of Engineers, but he doesn't use it. His wife gets an insurance as well, but apparently the city-provided insurance is so much better. So I understand that the level of insurance that you get paid for by the taxpayers of Glendale is an executive-level insurance like most of the city councilmen get today. So it's a significantly better insurance that you could possibly provide and that most people would probably have in the city of Glendale. So it appears that the explanation you gave last week has been simply an innocent inquiry, simply doesn't wash. You made a policy inquiry of staff to benefit a very limited number of beneficiaries. Of the 207,000 residents of Glendale, it only benefits the currently active city council members. That's 5 out of 207,000. And out of those, it only benefits those who are in council 10 years or 65. So that narrows it to only one person. To me, it is a clear indication of self-centered policy inquiry. It reminded me of the statements the mayor made about 3 years ago during the Charter Review Committee when he stated the reasons why he ran for council. And he said he ran for council because once retired, he knew that people who retired oftentimes die fairly early. It wasn't about citywide policy. It was about a benefit for himself. So I asked myself if you care to make an inquiry concerning the percentage of residents in Glendale who have no medical insurance. Did you ask how many children are uninsured in the city of Glendale? Did you ask about how many people will have asthma and emphysema as a result of the increased traffic congestion? Did you ask about the number of families who are not covered by medical benefits and who use the emergency services, the ambulance and the emergency room, as a way of getting into a hospital and getting free medical care? Those are pertinent questions concerning policy that benefits and impacts a lot of people in the city of Glendale. And I'm thankful that City Council and the city manager have promoted clinics for those individuals who are uninsured, and I think we have made significant strides in addressing those needs, and I'm very thankful for the approach that those of you who have promoted it. I believe that serving in City Council is truly about serving the public first, with the dignity to tell the truth. Thank you.
Connie Lingus, followed by Nancy Kent. Connie Lingus, Lynguess, Rancho District, out horses. Okay, Nancy, you and Sharon Wiseman, are you a tag team? You look at. Oh, just something just kind of struck me. Not yet.
My name is Nancy Kent. I'm a resident of Glendale, and I made notes so I won't leave anything out. Mayor Weaver, council members Yusefian, Najarian, Manukian, Quintero, staff, and members of the public, I would like to invite you to an event that's sponsored by Glendale Peace Vigil. We have rented the auditorium of the Glendale Central Library, 222 East Harvard Street, this Friday, October 13th, Doors open 7 p.m., and the name of the event is Democracy for Sale. Are you scared yet? We're showing a film called The Big Buy, Tom DeLay's Stolen Congress. It's about laws broken by elected officials and lobbyists at the state and federal levels of government. Repeat, state and federal levels of government. It's about Tom DeLay, Jack Abramoff, and others. And we're showing the short 27-minute version of The Big Buy. And by the way, Congressman David Dreyer does not have a speaking part in this film, but sometimes when they're showing a press conference, you do see Congressman Dreyer among the people who are standing near the person who's speaking at the press conference. After the Big Buy film, our guest speaker, Ian Russell, will talk about clean money elections and Proposition 89, and we've allowed lots of time for audience discussion. The clean money elections portion of Proposition 89 is modeled after successful state laws now in place in Arizona and Maine that provide voluntary public financing to candidates who gather a required number of signatures and $5 contributions from voters who live in that district. These laws have resulted in decreasing the influence of lobbyists and large donors and increasing the competitiveness and voter turnout in those states. You can learn more about Prop 89 at this event Friday or www.yeson89.org or call 800-440-6877. And since our event is on Friday the 13th in October, we've added a costume contest, and we're going to give the cleanest $10 bills we can find to the winner in each of 5 costume categories. Yes, a whopping $10 cash prize, spare no expense, to the person with the best Democracy for Sale costume and the best Yes on Prop 89 costume and the scariest political costume and the best peace costume and the best presentation during the costume parade. There will also be participation prizes for everyone who participates in the costume parade, which is at the very end of this event. And very important, costumes are optional at this, so don't let us scare you away if you don't want to wear a costume. Come in street clothes, work clothes, play clothes, or any costume. And there will be tables there in the auditorium with information about other local community groups and political books and DVDs for sale. This event is free, but we welcome donations to help pay for renting the auditorium. You can get 3 hours of free parking with a library validation in the marketplace structure across the street from the library at Maryland and Harvard. And yes, the Glendale Peace Vigil continues to gather every Friday, 5 to 7 p.m., Broadway and Brand. Everyone is welcome. For information about this event or anything else I've said, you can call me at 818-242-4320. And once again, our event is in the main Glendale Library this Friday, October 13th. Doors open 7 p.m. And Sharon, would you like to add anything?
Well, I want to thank Sparky for coming in costume, in her firefighter costume today, too, and hope she'll come to our event. And emphasize that even though we are the Peace Vigil and we are against the war in Iraq, this particular event, we welcome people from all aspects of the political spectrum. We hope that everyone is interested in clean money elections and sweeping out corruption from government. So we hope you'll all join us. Thank you.
Thank you. Leon Mayer, followed by Rezian McCrewy. Hope I said that right.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor. My name is Leon Mayer, and I'm here on behalf of the Friends of Glendale Public Library, and good evening to the members of the council and staff. On October 17th, a week from tonight, we're going to have Ken Jennings, the famous winner from Jeopardy, at the library to talk about his book, Brainiac, the adventures in the curious, competitive and compulsive world of Trivial Pursuits. And he will be there at 7 o'clock to sell his book, to meet the public, to sign his book, and talk about his book. And his book actually is a very interesting book. It talks about his experience in winning 75 weeks in a row on Jeopardy and winning a few $1 million, which he donated 10% to his church, which is kind of interesting, too. It'll also talk about the history of Trivial Pursuit, which goes back to the 17th century. And he'll also talk about some of his activities with college quiz programs and things of that nature. And also, next Tuesday in the morning, either it's probably around 8 o'clock or that hour, on KTLA, Channel 9, he will be interviewed, and part of his discussion will be the event we're having at the library that evening. So we expect a good turnout. It's free, admission is free, parking can be validated from the marketplace, and get there early. We'll have him there early to sign his book, to meet with you, and it should be a great evening. Now, the other event we're going to have in October, and that's the only thing I'm going to talk to you tonight about, is the October 17th program, and then October 25th, Wednesday, 7 o'clock at the Central Library, we're going to have a program called Cool Dames Packing Heat. Now, I don't make these flyers. Chuck White from the library does these very clever flyers. He's the community director at the Glendale Public Library, and he is very good at it. And you should read some. Those who haven't seen the flyers, you should see them. They're very interesting and challenging. But we're going to have 3 lady murder mystery writers on the 25th of October. That's 2 weeks from tomorrow night. And and one of them is Denise Hamilton. Now, Denise Hamilton's a Glendale resident. She's married, lives here. Her 2 kids go to school here. And she's becoming famous throughout the country as a murder mystery writer. Her previous book just finished. Her 4th book is Savage Garden. Her book that she's just finished and is going to be talking about primarily is called Prisoner of Memory, which delves into the Russian community. Some of her books have different ethnic approaches, and they're very interesting. She's won awards almost from the beginning with her clever work in murder mystery writing. She was an LA Times columnist. She was a Fulbright scholar. She traveled to Bosnia during the Bosnia-Herzegovina War and taught there in that area. So she's a very worldly person, and she's a very clever person, and she's bringing with her 2 other beautiful ladies. In other words, if you want nothing else, you're going to be able to see 3 very attractive ladies on the 25th of October who are very intelligent as well. One of the other speakers, the writers, are Harley Jane Kovac, and some of you might know of her from the soap operas Santa Barbara and Guided Light. And she's also written books, and she's written 3 books. She's in the process of finishing her 3rd book, and her books have classic names like Dating Dead Men and Dating for Murder, and also the one she's now finishing is called Dead X. Now, that Dead X is kind of interesting because she's a local lady, too. She lives in Topanga Canyon.
Is she married?
Well, I'm going to get to that in a second. I'm glad you asked that question.
The husband better be very careful.
I'm glad you asked that question because she lives in Topanga Canyon with her 2 big dogs, 3 children, and her trial lawyer husband. I don't know if she's told her trial lawyer husband about this new book she's writing, but does that answer your question?
Send a message to him, maybe?
And then,
you better watch out.
Eddie, let me just finish real quickly.
Please, quick.
Our 3rd speaker, 3rd writer, is a lady by the name of Patricia Smiley. She lives in L.A. She's written 1 book, and it's going to be about False Prophets. She's lived in L.A., and it's another book about Los Angeles. So we don't want you to overlook the October 25th for Cool Dames Packing Heat, but we know you're going to be there for Ken Jennings. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Margaret Hammer, followed by Nairi Nahabedian.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, city staff, and Glendale residents. Before I start, one of my things I'd like to bring up, which I read on the weekend, is John Lawson Jr. I don't know how many of you knew him. He was a very nice young man. His father and Casey Stengel were responsible, of course, for Valley National Bank, for founding it and running it, and he ended up after his father died. And I knew him 50 years ago, and I guess it was 65 or 67, his obituary. I felt very sad. He was a very nice young man, and was involved with the city of Glendale in the life and the volunteering of Glendale for many years. I don't know how many of you knew him, but I knew him as a person. Matter of fact, I'll never forget, I went in the bank. I worked for a company whose business was a couple of doors from Valley National down on Central when it opened. And I'll never forget, he was there, and I thought he was the office boy. And so when I would go in, I was the treasurer for my company, secretary-treasurer, kind of, order him around and whatnot, as usual. And he was always very kind and very polite. And he was absolutely wonderful to my mother and father, who had a small account there, and he always went out of his way. And I know many people who knew him would like to think that he did have a big part of the life of Glendale for many years in the life of Glendale. We've lost a lot of wonderful people, very young, this year to cancer. Bob, Mary, several, some of them in their 50s, their 60s, early 60s. So we do need to keep fighting for or hoping for a cure in that field. Okay, Fire Prevention Week. The emphasis being on homes, businesses, etc., for fire safety through the proper use of anything that could cause a fire, whether it be a squirt on a barbecue fire from a starter fluid, or to large barbecues burning large amounts of wood. But, how about banquet halls? Not just the ones using illegal outside barbecues, but the ones using inside barbecues and otherwise. Are all of these banquet halls properly equipped with fire sprinkler systems? We all know the consequences of insufficient fire sprinklers, inadequate exits, and cigarette smoking catching flammable drapes, etc., on fire. And how many thousands have lost their lives in these ridiculous, not unnecessary fires because of the lack of fire sprinklers. Horrendous. Loss of young people and so forth. This is not to mention the continuing, ongoing abuse of our police department, as well as our fire department having to respond to fires or whatever in these facilities, but to the police department responding to fights, late night, loud talking, and all of the other things that go with it. All of these abuses end up costing the taxpayers of Glendale in a big way. And that's not even counting what it costs adjacent residents to these banquet halls in lost sleep, stress, and loss of their quality of life, let alone the curse of the lack of parking, that they're allowed to be there with inadequate parking over and over again. It comes up. And this definitely affects the local residents' quality of life. It really is not fair to continue to allow these abuses on the tax-paying public of Glendale. Whether they come here and speak, I worked at an event over the weekend, and everybody that came and talked to me at various locations where I was said, keep on talking about it. Yeah, I said, but what about you guys? What happens when my voice and my energy gives out? So, again, I say to you people out there, If you have a beef, get over here and tell them about it. Don't let me stand up here by myself fighting the battle. You get out here and fight the battle too with me. Thank you very much.
Mr. Starbird, that reminds me, we postponed the drilling part of the ordinance. It was supposed to come back soon. When is it coming back? Next week?
Next week.
And then when is the whole when there's a whole banquet issue coming back?
I don't have
Be
my
nice to-
future agenda.
It'd be nice to bring this to closure.
We haven't got a date
we haven't scheduled
on
yet.
a study session or a follow-up meeting on
We're
banquet
going to do another
facilities.
study session?
I'm not sure. I was going to speak to the city manager about it. I thought we had a pretty good idea of what council was going towards so that we could start putting together a draft ordinance. But you were still weighing the idea of covenants versus deemed approved.
but let's
and
get it moving. This is-
need to see what it looks like.
Been
as
dragging
an
on too many
ordinance.
years. Let's try to get this taken care of.
Well,
Christmas present
by
for the
schedule.
community. Okay, Nairi Nahabidian and tag team of Paula Devine. Oh, Paula, what are you doing back there? Get up.
She's going to go first.
Oh, okay. Paula?
Mayor Weaver, council members, staff, my name is Paula Devine. In the spirit of the Commission on the Status of Women to create awareness of women's health issues, I'm here to remind the community that October is Breast Cancer Awareness Month. The American Cancer Society recommends for women to exercise, to eat right, to stop smoking, and to get regular mammograms. The bottom line is that early detection is our best protection. So I just would like to make all the women and men in Glendale aware that this is Breast Cancer Awareness Month, and please take care of yourselves. Thank you.
Okay. Good evening, Mr. Mayor and council members and staff. Commission on the Status of Women would like to invite Glendale residents to a Get Ready, Get Set, Vote panel discussion, or rather, a League of Women Voters will be there to tell us about propositions. If any one of you in the public is watching TV, there are a lot of propositions out there, and there are a lot of commercials out there about how to vote and how not to vote. And so here's an opportunity in one evening to get information about these propositions. They are lengthy to read and somewhat tricky to understand. And League of Women Voters, a longtime organization, reputable, unbiased, will be there to present on these propositions. We will be focusing on 4 of them in particular, but there will be information on all of the propositions. The 4 we will be focusing on related to the Commission on the Status of Women's work is Proposition 1C, related to housing, Proposition 83, regarding to sex offenders and where they are able to live and be, Proposition 85, regarding parental notification, and Proposition 86, regarding to tobacco tax. But again, there will be information on all of the propositions there. So come tomorrow, if you're watching this live, it is tomorrow, Wednesday 11th, from 6 to 8 p.m. Wednesday, October 11th, 6 to 8 p.m. at Spar Heights Community Center, and the address is 1613 Glencoe Way. Again, it's Spar Heights Community Center. There will be refreshments, there'll be childcare, and we are doing this in partnership with the League of Women Voters and our own city clerk's office. So please do come, and November 7th, Tuesday, Election Day, be informed, and thanks so much.
Thank you. Mike Lawler, followed by Barry Allen.
Hello. My name is Mike Lawler, and I'm the president of the Historical Society of the Crescenta Valley. Last weekend, many of you had the chance to see the best of architecture in Glendale, and this coming Saturday, we invite you up to the Crescenta Valley to breathe the clean air and see our architecture up there. We've got some tickets for you right here, some free tickets. You can pass them out. Thank you. This will be Saturday, 11 to 4, and come up to the American Legion Hall up there. That's where it starts, and you'll hear a fascinating history. And while I'm here, I wanted to talk a little bit about history. Here on our poster, you see the Bonetto home. About 3 weeks ago, the council voted to make the Bonetto home a Glendale Historic Landmark, the first house up in the Crescenta Valley to get that honor. The Bonetto family was long-term residents of the valley, some of the pioneers there. In the 20s, when no alcohol was allowed, like any good Italian family, they made their own wine. They had big wine presses and wine barrels. In the 30s, when Prohibition was over, all that material went down into the basement, and it's been there ever since. Tom Bonetto, the son of the Bonetto family, on Thursday is coming out to clean out the basement. He's going to pull those big presses and barrels out. Up at Duke Magian Park is the old winery barn, and the city is going through a seismic retrofit in hopes that that'll be a community center someday. It's also hoped that we'll have a little museum up there on the history of winemaking. And Mr. Bonetto is going to donate the wine press and the big wine barrels to the city of Glendale on Thursday for that. So thank you very much.
Thank you. I know some people that took the Glendale Historical Tour this last Saturday, too. They said it was absolutely fascinating.
Great.
The houses they went into, they couldn't believe it. So,
We got some good ones, too. Come on up.
okay, thank you. Barry Allen?
Should grow some grapes up there. Get the winery going. Make some money there.
Mr. Mayor, Council, staff, and the public, I'm Barry Allen with Vanguard. There was an article in the Glendale News Press in December of 2003. Here's a statement from that article. No outside group is going to be allowed to come in and start looking over the shoulder of the city attorney, the city manager, and start making reports to whom, said Dave Weaver. They have no legitimacy, no power, no rights, no nothing. That had to do with the beginnings of Vanguard, when it was called the Citizens for Glendale. Now, we've continued. This is several years later, and very little has changed with the exception of the fact that Vanguard has been shedding the light on problems within the city. Now, a conversation earlier with the government relations people from Charter Communications indicated that Charter provided television services to the Miss Asia pageant, knowing and understanding that it was a children's program. And they, of course, assumed that it was for a non-profit organization representing the children. But instead, they provided services to a for-profit organization that certainly wasn't children-oriented. Now, further conversation with them indicated that their vice chair of Charter Communications, Mark B. Nathanson, who has two bits of business before the city. One, of course, is the fact that Charter Communications has been running a month-to-month franchise for providing cable services to the residents of Glendale. And the second hat that he wears is the chair of Mapleton Investments. Now, Mapleton Investments also has business before the council. What is that business? It's a property at 610 North Central, known as Verdugo Gardens. And from what I've seen, it's going to be a great building complex of condominiums and gardens that will certainly look well in the city. So Mr. Nathanson has written a big check to the Dreaming of Roses, but we'll probably never know what that check was written for, because the Dreaming of Roses special bank account is one that Mr. Weaver uses, and it is not reported to the Glendale Rose Float Association, whose tax ID number that special bank account uses. Now, what is the money used for? We don't know. There's never been an audit. Nobody's ever seen the expenses, deposits, or checks that have been written from that. So let's go back to that statement. They have no legitimacy, no power, no rights, no nothing. But we do have the spotlight of respectability, the spotlight of accountability, the spotlight that shines on each of the officials in the city as to what their lack of accountability is. We have heard statements earlier from Nancy Kent. They're having a vigil for the Prop 89. Now, do you think they're going to get the library for free, as did Miss Asia Pageant? $2,500 gift to the mayor? Probably not. And I think it's time, and Margaret Hammond made a comment that she stands alone. Margaret, you don't stand alone. The phone calls that Vanguard gets at this number, 243-1502, from numerous people saying, Margaret, you speak for me. Herbert Milano, you speak for me. Unfortunately, we can't be at the City Council meeting, but you speak for us. And for those who would like a copy of the whole Glendale News Press article, it's available at the table as you walk into the City Council meeting. I am Barry Allen for Vanguard.
Something I just want to add here. I certainly believe in the First Amendment rights, and that's exercised here every Tuesday. I fully support it. Also, the Public Records Act, which is embedded in the Constitution, is also very, very important in this community, as with any community. But I've heard a lot of discussion among city staff about the number of requests that Mr. Barry Allen Silverman, and I use Silverman because that is his real name, the request he made. Now, I did what any citizen in this city can do. I went down to the city clerk's office and asked if they had a file on Mr. Allen's number of requests, and I did. It was produced. It's about 2 inches thick. Over 190 requests have been made by him. I counted 61 since July. I thought that the public ought to know some of the things he's asking. Anybody can go down and do it. I paid $1.60 to make copies, so I could read a few of the late ones that just come in the last week or two. Please provide a document containing the names of officials that have not provided the Statement of Economic Interest, Form 700, for 2005, filed in 2006, and those taking and leaving office. Chief Arras and Captain Miller of the Glendale Fire Department are part of a project team for a new Station 26 using a design-build concept. The team is seeking legal counsel and a project manager. Please provide documentation for this, including the names and the departments of team members. Our document present at the meetings of the project team, as well as the minutes taken thereof. Please provide documents relating to the authorization of the Beeline buses to be used for the Miss Asia pageant in 2006. There was no Beeline buses used, by the way. Please provide Beeline driver daily vehicle inspection reports for all Beeline vehicles for the following 2006 dates: April 22nd and 23rd, 29th and 30th, and May 6th and 7th. And in all documents, memoranda, and messages regarding or about Barry Allen and or Vanguard from any city official in any or any city department other than requests for public records or responses to those requests from 1 July 2005 through and including September 26, 2006. Staff report and other documents supporting the planned realignment of Beeline Route 3, eliminating Honolulu and Montrose.
Are you going to read all 2 inches?
No, I'm just reading the last 2 weeks. Okay. Documents indicating the policy on providing tours of the fire stations. Please provide policy in the Glendale Police Department stopping city officials for such offenses on alleged DUI. Provide documents relating to the discount schedule for the services of the Glendale Police Department. Documents indicating the hospitals and other designations to which Glendale Fire Department paramedics transport clients during the period of January 2004 and including September 6, 2006. All documents related to the facade improvement grant for the Royal Palace on Brand, and Glendale Fire Department company activity logs for April 29, 2006 for all 16 companies and battalion chief. All documents regarding HUD OIG audit of July 2006. And finally, invoices from MV Transport for Beeline operations for March, April, and May 2006. Those are all public records requests legitimately asked for, and it does require staff time to respond to those. Periodically, I'll let the public know. Anybody's encouraged to go down. They can ask about any public request anybody has made or make their own request too. Mr. Manukian.
Yes, on a positive note, Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
Under council comments, I forgot to mention one item. And this item is that this week it was announced that the Glendale Department of Public Works has been named the Department of the Year by the National Public Works Association.
Yeah, right.
It's a national competition and is a tremendous acknowledgement for our staff and our department, the great work that the Public Works Department do. I have a special place for Public Works in my heart. I've worked in a Public Works Department a number of years ago. It wasn't called Public Works, but it was called Civil Engineering Squadron. So I know that the work that you do is difficult, and it's difficult, and there's so many different things that the department has to do. I just want to commend the department, Steve, Rubik, and everyone that's involved in the department, and all the people that on a daily basis go out in their trucks and try to take care of the potholes. They pick up the trash. They maintain the streets. They maintain the sidewalks. They maintain the city. It's not a glorified job, but that's what keeps our city together. That's what keeps our infrastructure together. So I want to congratulate Steve, Mr. Zern, we should call you, on a job well done. And please relay to everyone in the department my personal appreciation for the work that you do, and I want to congratulate all of them for being named Department of the Year by the National Public Works Association. Congratulations.
And I think, Mr. Starbird, I asked that we do a recognition of Public Works as soon as we get it together.
Yeah, there'll be a formal presentation at the upcoming American Public Works Conference.
Well, no, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, we're hoping it's actually through a magazine. They're coming out here from Chicago on the 19th to take pictures, and we're hoping that they'll come before you and present that. If not,
roll it all into one.
If they don't, we
will
will.
bring that to you.
The public's got to know how good you guys are.
This was a national?
Yeah.
Yes, this is a national award.
We didn't vote for it.
You didn't vote for
You
it.
didn't get,
No.
They didn't ask us for our votes.
No.
Obviously, we would have
nothing to do with
supported
it.
you wholeheartedly, but
Last year it was the city of Norfolk, Virginia. I'm not sure, but I think this is as far west as a winner has been so far. So
congratulations.
But again, for those that find fault with this city and the staff that make it run, is another example. We're not half bad. Mr. Yusefian?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think some of the questions that Mr. Allen had brought up, I just wanted to let you know that as part of our ethics training class, it had come to the attention of our city attorney that there was a law in the book since 1998 that many cities, not just us, many cities did not know about. And that law is that any council member who goes out and raises money for either a nonprofit organization or any organization, so long as it's over $5,000 and it's asked on behest of that council member, you have to report it. That was something that none of us knew, and I had just found out about it after I had gone out there and raised about $29,000 for a Unity Fest, which goes to the city of Glendale, doesn't go to me. Nevertheless, even though I raised the money for the city and the check was written to the city, under this law, I have to file a document saying that some of this money was raised in behest of Councilman Yusefian for Unity Fest, which was a city program. And I think this is going to apply to all council members. I just don't know how far back it's going to go, but I was told by Mr. Howard that the city attorney is in the process of working out a document that doesn't even exist. So as soon as a document exists, I will file that, and the filing is with the city clerk. So any of us who raise money on behest of us for any organization, whether it's profitable or nonprofit or whatever it is, from now on, if it's over $5,000, it's going to be listed. So that will become available. And for myself, and I understand that Mr. Weaver is a little bit frustrated at sometimes that there's so much time being spent when people ask for public documents.
I'm not frustrated.
Well,
You're putting words in my
okay,
mouth.
I won't say that. I won't say.
Speak for
Nevertheless,
yourself.
the bottom
Oral
line is,
communications,
okay.
I'd like to move it along pretty quick.
well, Mr. Weaver, you took a whole bunch of time reading about all the stuff
I'll do it under
Mr.
council
Allen
comments
did.
the next time, Mr. Yusefian.
Thank you very
But
much.
Please conclude.
Thank you very much. The bottom line is, I think people have a right to get any documents that legally they're allowed to get access to. That's what you could do in this country.
Thank you, Mr. Yusefian. I think I said that very clearly. Very clearly.
Thank you. And I don't
And I
think
was
we need to
standing next to
harass
you.
people
I am
by
not-
reading the list of all the stuff they asked.
Mr. Yusefian, do not put words in my mouth.
Well,
I
Mr.
was
Weaver,
not harassing. End of discussion. And I was standing next to you, and Mr. Howard told you you had to report, just like he told me.
Right.
And you said, what? I got to do that? Why? I was standing right next to you.
I'm
I
not
heard it
talking
all.
about that. I'm talking about reading the
That's-
list of all the people,
Mr. Yusefian,
what
if you
they
want
asked.
to pick on me, do it off camera.
I'm not
Don't
picking
you-
on you.
You're sitting here trying to take me on, and I don't appreciate it from a
Weaver,
colleague.
I am not
Now,
taking you
you're
on.
out of order. We're done with this. Let's move on.
All right.
What's next, please? Quit.
At
Okay, Mr.
8A is Director of Parks, Recreation, and Community Services regarding proposed Glendale Narrows Riverwalk project. At 8A1, resolution adopting a mitigated negative declaration. At 8A2 is motion accepting the proposed concept plan for purpose of submittal of grant applications for project funds. At 8A3, motion approving city commitment for grant application purposes to operate and maintain proposed facilities once constructed.
What do you want, George?
And at
No money.
And at 8A4, resolution dispensing with competitive bidding and awarding a contract to Northeast Trees, a nonprofit organization, to serve as design-build contractor for the construction.
Mayor,
Yes, Mr. Yusefian.
move 8A1.
Second.
Okay, and I have just one question. Was the Corps of Engineers consulted because the path along the river is for maintenance purposes, and the Corps of Engineers has the maintenance on that?
I'll turn that over to John Pearson, who's our
It's always
project
been
manager.
gated, so
John has been working with a number of people along that
reading the
route.
report, I couldn't see where the Corps of Engineers was mentioned.
Okay.
I'd like to have a presentation. Yeah, I'd like the public, and I think this is very exciting and something that the public needs to know about. So.
Okay. Yeah, we'd love to
Well,
give you the...
could you answer my question first?
John?
Yes, we've coordinated extensively with the Corps of Engineers, the county, the city of Los Angeles. It's been a big jurisdictional...
I know that area very well.
Do you have a conflict on it? Were you part of the construction?
No. That was my project when I was with the Corps 6 years ago.
The Corps has been very supportive. They've actually been extremely
They
supportive
can
of
still
what's...
require you to have gates
Yes.
at the end so public, they can ride a bicycle in or walk in, but they can't drive cars in, right?
Yes.
Okay.
And it does have to be gated so that you can keep people out when
Gotcha.
there's heavy rain.
Okay.
let me just...
Yeah, while John's setting up, and part of what this agenda report is asking for is permission to go sole source with Northeast Trees, which is a nonprofit organization. John will give you the background on Northeast Trees. They've have extensive experience doing Riverwalk projects.
May I use the handheld mic? I'm a little hoarse now, and that might help.
You ride a horse along the road?
No.
You've been swimming in the river, is that the deal?
You don't want to swim in that river.
There is
believe
a
me.
section where you can do that up in the equestrian.
Mr. Mayor, Councilman, staff, good evening. I want to give you just a brief overview of the project, talk a little bit about what's been happening along the Los Angeles River lately, and talk a little bit about our partnership with Northeast Trees and preparing the application for funds to implement the project. This is the regional context for the project. Los Angeles River, the black dots are the Phase 1 of Riverwalk, which is what we're talking about tonight. It runs along the north bank of the Los Angeles River, opposite Griffith Park, starts at Betty Davis Park at the west end, runs under the I-5, past Disney ABC 7, past DreamWorks, exits at Flower Street. The future Phase 2 of Riverwalk will start where Phase 1 ends and go down to the confluence of the Verdugo Wash, where it will meet a trail coming up from the Los Feliz area that's been partially installed by Northeast Trees now and will later be completed to the confluence. On the opposite side of the river is the Los Angeles Bike Trail, City of Los Angeles Bike Trail, and our trail would go down to the Riverside Drive Bridge, connect with that trail, and connect into Griffith Park. This is a closer look at the site. Again, it starts at Betty Davis Park. We have an entry park in this area. There'll be a small equestrian facility in this area that will provide a staging area for equestrians that live in the horse overlay zone adjacent to the project. They won't use the project trail, but they will stage here for riding in this area and for riding along the north side of Betty Davis Park toward the equestrian center. The half mile of trail that the project includes goes under the I-5. There'll be a second small park area adjacent to the ABC 7 and the Disney property or the DreamWorks properties. And again, it connects to Flower Street. There's a small rest area at the east end of the project for bicyclists and riders, bicyclists and pedestrians. Only bicyclists and pedestrians, again, will use the trail. Equestrians will use trails to the west of the project. The park area by ABC 7 and DreamWorks will be a passive area for picnicking and walking. It will also have trees that are native to the area, an arboretum for plants native to the Glendale Riverwalk area, and we'll have some interpretive displays on the natural ecology of the area.
What kind of plants are native to the Glendale Riverwalk area?
Oak trees. We could. There will be a long
Here
list.
knows the answer.
Pardon me?
This entire area here, even was part of the riverbed back centuries. And when we filled it in and constrained it, all this fill, none of these trees existed. Anything that's there now is not native. It was put there. So.
No, that's true. The ecology of the area has certainly changed, but we will plant trees. Plants that are native to riparian areas in the Glendale Riverwalk area in general.
Different. He's saying native to riparian areas.
Now, these plants may not have existed on that particular spot before. That particular spot wasn't there. It's been raised when the channel was put in and the dike was built. Yeah. But we are trying to illustrate.
He's just trying to catch you.
Good question by Mr. Manukin. Got to be on your toes when you're up there.
Okay.
You do pay attention.
This is Betty Davis Park at the west end of the project site. This is where our entry park will be. It's a vacant lot right now. There's a storm drain that runs under this area, so it's probably not usable for anything else except a park area. This is looking from the opposite direction across the same entry side area. There's floodgates up here that are no longer used. They're obsolete, but they are of historic interest. There's a lot that's of historic interest around the site, and we will have a historic interpretive site somewhere in the project.
That looks like a good skateboard area.
I'm sure that it is. This would be the level of the trail. We would have a ramp coming up from the entry park area. There's a soft bottom in the channel of in this area. You can see there's a lot of vegetation in the channel in this area. Here's the Riverside Drive Bridge that crosses over into Griffith Park, and Griffith Park in the background. This is the design concept for the entry park. We have a small parking lot for people who are staging for walks or bicycle rides or equestrian rides in this area. And then we have the ramp that comes up from the entry park to the level of the trail. And there's the floodgates.
So what happens, like on that previous slide? Okay, so you'll be able to walk and ride along on the asphalt there?
Not here. The trail, actually, this is what you were looking at in the previous slide, and that's not really part of the project. The ramp will come from this area up to the trail.
Okay, so is there a fence or something between the river side slope and the walking trail?
No. Ordinarily, the paths along the river, bicycle paths and hiking paths, if it's a trapezoidal channel, don't have fences along the side. Some of them do.
I know, but we're going to have kids are going to get up there with the bikes and stuff and start going down the side slopes, down to touch the water.
It's a design issue that we can discuss. Actually, it has been discussed quite a lot. It's an issue of some interest among the Los Angeles River Master Plan Advisory Committee people who have been dealing with these projects. There's been a lot of discussion as to whether there should be fencing or not. The bicycle riders generally feel that the fencing is more dangerous than the slope is if they fall off.
I'll tell you, all the years that I managed that river, it was gated so no one can get onto those because of the safety factor of people going down the slopes to the water. And that water is moving over 32 feet a second. And if you're standing in there and it's 3 to 4 inches deep, you'll be swept away. People don't understand the strength of that water. And true, that's the soft bottom area. But you get down to the concrete areas, you're not going to survive. So
it's a design issue. We're open to discussion on it. We are right now trying to determine what the county is going to use as a guideline, whether they would prefer to see it fenced or not. And they haven't. We've asked them
the county
that.
and the Corps.
Pardon me?
County and the Corps, because this is the Corps of Engineers maintenance reach. Does not belong to the county.
Okay, we are following guidelines that both the county and the Corps have approved.
I'm saying the soft bottom reach is
They do maintain this.
operated by
Yes.
the Corps of Engineers.
Yes.
So this whole segment is Corps.
But the agreement that we signed for using this
It's
area,
between the county with the Corps buying in.
yes,
So the safety angle, the same thing.
and the guidelines have been approved by both the county and the Corps that we're following, and they're now debating the
Okay.
issue. We've asked them for a reading on this as to whether there should be fencing, and we're waiting
Okay,
for
that's
an
all I'm
answer.
concerned about. I've seen too many deaths by Mr. Yusefian.
The trees are not called out. I mean, what are they?
This is a concept design. We haven't gotten to detailed design for the site yet. We don't
That's
know.
pretty detailed for a concept
No,
design.
that's a concept.
What is the trees? What would you put conceptually there?
Conceptually,
Give me a conceptual tree.
an oak tree,
Okay.
a sycamore. There's a wide variety of choices you would have for the trees. The site now is totally vacant and unused except for the maintenance roads that Mayor Weaver was talking about before. This is used by the Corps of Engineers, the county occasionally, and the city of Glendale occasionally. Right now, it is a blighted area. It is partially within one of our major redevelopment areas, the San Fernando Road redevelopment area. And one thing the project would do is clean up this area a lot. We'd resurface the road, make repairs as necessary, get rid of the graffiti. This might become one of our environmental art projects. We would definitely improve this area. And we've been told by people who do these projects along the river that when the area is improved and it becomes a trail and there are parks put in, that the transients and the gang activity decreases considerably.
We do use those roads during flood situations. That's our way we find out where there's potential problems along the river channel.
Yes.
So Corp and the county patrol those.
Yes. Yes.
That was my reach that I patrolled.
It is, as I said, that the only use that's made of it now is by the Corps, the county, and the city of Glendale.
Fence is on the outside.
Are they going to paint the bridge?
We have two environmental art projects that'll be done at some place within the project, but we don't know where yet.
Is that a yes, or are they going
I
to
don't
paint?
know.
It's conceptual.
We're not going to paint the bridge. We might paint something on the bridge,
Okay.
or we
What
might
about
paint
that-
something
that
on the abutment
concrete
there.
thing with the graffiti on it.
The abutment. There's a good chance that would be one of, we might put a mural on the abutment there. But that, again, that's design, and we haven't gotten to design yet, past the concept design. It's conceptual.
What'll be the time frame for this section linking up with the southerly section so that it'll actually go somewhere?
We don't know. We would have to raise grant funds for Phase 2. It actually will go somewhere, which I'll talk a little bit about
I know
later.
it will. And I think overall it's a great concept. I have a lot of concern about this one stretch, that without it being connected, the security issues that may arise here. I mean, I'm not sure how many and which individuals will use this stretch if it doesn't connect to something.
It's going to have to go through the city of Los Angeles.
I mean, given that the area we see here under Bridgman, we all know the kind of activity that this may tend to attract, and the concern I have is just one of security. Without there being a connection and a flow of people who are likely to use this, have we thought about that?
Yes, it's been discussed a lot. Now, this won't be used at night. It'll be closed at night, like all the rest of our parks are. There would be patrols. The rangers would look here occasionally, but mainly when this is used by gangs and transients is in the evening. And
Well, I think it's going to be used because the spillover from Betty Davis Park, this is a natural outlet for people that go to that park, and it's heavily used. So I think they would gravitate to the river, and so I think it's going to be
The transit?
used.
Well, there's going to be
No, there are
gates.
families that go to Betty Davis Park. If you are familiar with that area, there's people there all the time.
Right. And as John shows you the rest of it, there is another park piece with potential picnic areas that people may use, and that may help with the discussion.
But there are gates back there that would be closed anyhow for flood control purposes, right? Because you don't want people there during a flood event. So
that's
there's
right.
gates back
It would be gated at the ends to
So
keep
they're-
people from going in.
The gates are closed at night.
Yes.
People out from riding, and they're closed during flood events.
Yes.
Is there any plans on putting a camera there by any chance?
That hasn't been discussed so far.
Yeah, because there are special cameras that they put in areas that you have issues with graffiti and so on and so forth. And what has happened is those security cameras have kept a lot of gang activities out because they know they're being watched. This is the only stretch I'm worried about is that little section right there because it's under the bridge and it's dark even during daylight. And if somebody wanted to jump someone, that's really good. The rest of it is open. The rest of the part that is running by the freeway, it's visible. You could see it. It's open. You know, nobody's going to do anything for you. But this is the only thing that I worry about. and I worry about the liabilities of it. If something happens, would we be, and this is something for the city attorney, if something happens over there, would we be liable? I hope the answer is no.
Well, as long as we have, safety precautions to make sure it's not a dangerous premises, we would be immune. But we'd have to have those in place.
And as far as graffiti goes, all the side slopes of the soft bottom channels, both upstream from here and clear down to the Royal Seco, where there's side slope trapezoidal channels, graffiti all over them, all over them. So this is just a little tiny spot.
Looking west toward I-5, the second park area that we discussed is here. It's adjacent to Disney ABC 7 and to DreamWorks, which is just to the east. This is, again, that same vacant area that would be a park, and that's some of the Disney ABC 7 buildings to the north of it. This is the trail as it goes by DreamWorks. You can see that the channel is changing here from a trapezoidal channel to a vertical channel.
Would the fence be heightened right next to the water?
It's got barbed wire on the top of it now.
It would probably be a 4-foot fence. There would be a new fence installed here. It would probably be a 4-foot fence.
That's it? Just 4 feet?
Well, it has barbed wire. Barbed wire is there for a purpose, to keep people out.
I don't know that our fence would have barbed wire on the top.
Well, talk to the Corps and talk to the county. We don't want people going over the fences.
Well,
4 is not going to be enough. I mean, if you're going to put a fence, at least make it good 6 feet. So
the Corps will have to approve whatever plans there are for any fencing that we do.
Okay.
The Corps and a number of other.
Yeah. I think you need to check with them, because I think they're going to be very, very careful with the issue of security of people not falling in there. We don't want people falling in there, because then we have to go out there and rescue them. So water rescues aren't fun. The fire department doesn't.
If they fall in there, they're going to die. You don't have to worry.
We will be very conscious.
Those walls
Safety
are high.
and security.
You're going to die if you fall in.
Now, anything we do is going to be examined in great detail by the Corps, and we're going to have to satisfy them.
All right.
This is the same spot looking the other direction where the river curves. Our project ends here. It connects to Flower Street here. This is where the Phase 2 project will start, go down by the Glendale
That's a hard line.
Utility Operations Center to the Verdugo Wash. There are a lot of benefits to the project besides just recreation. Obviously, it focuses on recreation with the trails and the 2 park areas, but we will be improving a blighted area that is within one of our redevelopment corridors. We'll be doing habitat improvement in a portion of the river channel. We'll have 4 interpretive sites within the project. The natural ecology, the history, the hydrology, and the urban infrastructure will all be interpreted with signage. It will be a good outdoor classroom for school classes to use. We'll have 2 places within the project where there will be environmental art. We're hoping to do some water quality improvements, some biofiltration to clean some of the water before it goes into the channel. A lot has been happening along the river. A lot of projects like River Walk with trails and parks have happened over the last 10 to 15 years. In the last 2 years, there's been a dramatic change in the focus on the river. That's happened in large part because of the Los Angeles River Master Plan Revitalization Project that's going on now in the city of Los Angeles. That project was inspired by projects on rivers that have happened in a lot of other cities very successfully. This is the San Antonio River. This is not a major part of the flood channel. It's a loop off the major part of flood channel through San Antonio. You have opportunities like this when you can control the amount of water in the river, which is one of the things that's being looked at for spots along the Los Angeles River now. This is Brush Creek in Kansas City. Platte River in Denver.
Someone's fallen in.
There's a kayak in there. They do kayaking in that river. And this is close to downtown Denver. Missouri River in Omaha. This is the Tempe Town Lake near downtown Phoenix. The park and the lake were created by inflatable dams on a channel that runs through the city here. It's amazing, some of the projects, the scale of some of the projects that are being done on urban rivers now, and that's the kind of thing that's being looked at at the Los Angeles River by the revitalization project right now. The city of Glendale...
Inflatable what?
Pardon me?
Inflatable?
Dams.
Inflatable
Fence?
dams.
Dams?
Rubber dams.
Can we put inflatable dams and kind of flood Griffith Park?
I don't think we could flood Griffith Park,
That's
but
another trick question.
There's a rubber dam out there right now up around Niagara Street in Burbank.
Yeah, it is.
there are a wide variety of things that are being looked at. It's actually very interesting to go to the workshops for the revitalization project and see the kinds of things that they're considering. Some of the projects are very imaginative and very far-reaching.
That area's really changed. I did the alignments on some of those flood control channels in Phoenix.
Well, it's
about 30 years ago.
That's pretty dramatic.
So what do you do when you flood the flood control channel there? I can understand. We had an engineer who used to work for the city, he used to mention that we should do that and have cafes on it and so on and so forth. And I guess some of you remember
Floating
that.
centers?
Yes. And so my question is, how do you...
He was suggesting flooding Brand, actually.
No, he wasn't.
We're getting forest stream from the...
So my question is, how do you do that, and then you have to deal with all the water that is standing there without any movement, with all the mosquitoes and stuff like that there?
You're not going to be allowed to do it to begin with.
You
The
can't.
state of California won't permit it.
Okay.
We have
So-
a rubber dam out there.
So
and they
don't
won't-
show us these things then.
They will not allow us to inflate the rubber dam, allow the Corps to inflate the rubber dam out in the LA River right now.
Okay.
Water quality.
As I said, this is a study that's in progress right now. There are a wide variety of suggestions that are being considered, and it's interesting to see the
Talked
things
about
that...
this for years down near the mouth.
Okay, the city of Glendale has 1.5 miles of river frontage on the Los Angeles River. We have the Verdugo Wash. Their Riverwalk is certainly a different scale from these things, but it's a first step toward things that are going to be happening on the river. Northeast Trees is working with us to prepare Proposition 50, Chapter 5 grant application for money to implement the project. Northeast Trees has more experience than anybody else in the Los Angeles River Channel at implementing projects and designing projects. They've done 25 projects in the channel. They have extensive experience in dealing with the jurisdictional and governance problems, and they have extensive experience at bringing money to these projects. Larry Smith is the executive director of Northeast Trees, and I'm just going to have him speak briefly about a couple of the projects they've done.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, City Council members. We're not going to. None of these are San Antonio Riverwalk. I'll assure you of that. We're not. None of these are rubber dams. A lot of these are very small projects that have been implemented between the end of the soft bottom stretch, which occurs just before where the 110, the Royal Seco confluence is, up to the Fletcher Drive and a little bit beyond Fletcher, between Fletcher and Los Feliz, on both sides of the river.
Right.
Many of these are pocket parks. They were all done on lands that were basically just lying vacant. A lot of the lands you saw in the slides along your stretch there are very similar to what we've actually done projects on. Many of these are landscaping. Some of them were access gates. There's a lot of public art that was done. Most of the art was done by local artists, as a matter of fact. The plants that were used are native plants to the region, not necessarily to the river in that particular stretch. For example, the oak trees and sycamores that you see in Betty Davis Park are likely the kinds of trees you'd see at that park at the entranceway there at Paula and Garden, that little area there. Willows are other native plants that would be used in some of the areas, the botanical garden area that John was referring to outside of ABC, Disney, that area. All of these projects were done in pretty intense collaboration with many different agencies. The MRCA and TP, in the early days, TPL was buying the land. Turning out, the MRCA was created as a governing authority, and they became the governing authority. We partnered with them, utilized open space district monies to build a lot of these parks. We've gotten several $1 million of state and county money to build these kinds of parks over the last 10 to 15, since 1995, about 10, 11 years. This is an example of the last park in that southern stretch of the Glendale Narrows area. Just at this point is when the soft bottom area ends. Just beyond this, to the right of that sign, is the Arroyo Seco confluence with the LA River. We call this Egret Park. You'll see a slide, I believe you'll see a slide when this was just built, not that many years ago, and how sort of, lean it looked with the newly planted trees. You can see how well the trees have grown. And these are sycamores and oaks, some toyon. It's all native plantings. A lot of the standards, by the way, and specifications that were put into the LA County master plan and the landscape plant palette and guidelines were derived from the work that we did. The stone work here, we try and use local materials, local stone that comes naturally out of the river or the river areas. We use native plants, as I mentioned. This is decomposed granite pathways. We use a lot of mulch. We use a lot of low-flow irrigation. Try and conserve the resources. This is right after Egret was first installed. You saw the slide before that showed Egret today. This was pretty soon after it was first installed. People use this stretch of bikeway and pathway for rollerblading, for their bicycling, for walking. They come out of the neighborhoods and some of the points like at Meadowvale where there's now a gate and some seating area to access this stretch of the river. This is what Steelhead Park looked like before it was built. This is what it looked like after it was built. This has now become very mature as a landscape. And this is a location where we're actually looking to install some water quality best management practice treatments for treating the water coming off of Oros. This is Elysian Valley. There's a lot of streets that dead end into the river here. So the state has funded us to look at some water quality treatments, infiltration trenches and so forth in this park area as another step in the evolution of the parks. That's the end of the slideshow. If you have any questions, I'll be more than willing to answer. We've been doing this for a very long time, as I mentioned. And John talked about the design. There's a lot of issues that you've raised are very good issues. They're the kind of issues that will be vetted through the stakeholder group, the technical stakeholder groups, and the community stakeholders that are convened. Things like safety. We look to the county and the Army Corps and the city for guidance on that in all of our projects. We do what the county and the Army Corps and the city want us to do. Public health, welfare, and safety is the reason we have licensure for both the contracting and the landscape design. If we didn't do that, we wouldn't be doing our job. So, and the suggestion you had about the surveillance cameras, that has been considered in other projects. We have a project at Hazard Park. We're looking at that because we've got some bridges down in the area that's not as accessible by patrols, and so we're looking at possibly installing cameras on some of the overpasses or taller poles. We're looking at that at Southgate. We have a park down there, park project down there, looking at the same thing for the same reasons. So,
thank you. I do have a card.
Not from you, probably from staff. Most of the funding for this project is coming from the state.
Yes.
So if we can make that statement.
Right. Most of the funding is coming from the state.
And it's from Proposition 50, is it?
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
And have we applied for that funding?
We haven't applied yet. We're going to apply in conjunction with Northeast Trees. They'll apply.
And what are the chances of getting the grants?
It was considered
We can't hear you. We can't hear you. It was pretty good.
It was used as a model in the workshop when they held some workshops about how to apply for this particular round of funding. It was used as a model for the previous round. This project wasn't funded in the previous round largely because we had to go through this process, finish the environmental clearance process, make sure that all of the agreements with landlords and stuff had been vetted properly.
$1.3 million?
$1.3 million would come from the state or matching funds other than the city of Glendale out of 1.4.
If we don't get those funds, we don't do the project?
The project doesn't happen.
It doesn't happen.
Okay. Mr. Najarian.
Along those lines, regarding the grant, and those grant funds are also available for the operation and maintenance as well as the capital?
Not for the maintenance.
No, we have to absorb the maintenance within our own budget.
And what is the by fiscal impact?
Approximately $75,000 a year for maintenance and operation.
And that would include, obviously, we've heard some concerns about safety and rangers and all that, so that
All that's
an
factored in.
important
Yes.
factor that we're all concerned about.
Yeah, all that's
Okay.
factored into
I
it.
do have 2 cards. Do you want to hedge? Want to try 3 minutes?
Is it? Good evening, Council, Mayor, and staff. My name is Joanne Hedge from the Glendale Rancho. On behalf of Rancho residents and members of the Glendale Rancho Homeowners Association, this is to urge approval for the Glendale Narrows Riverwalk project before you tonight, with its wonderful equestrian trailhead element and other inviting outdoor features. Your support is vital as the city's Parks, Recreation, and Community Development Department goes forward with its application for a Proposition 50, Chapter 5 River Parkway grant by October 16th. Reflecting years of vision, research, and planning by the city's park staff with enthusiastic resident input, this multi-use project will so enhance a severely blighted area along the Los Angeles River, from DreamWorks and the Disney campus to the foot of Garden Street. And it represents Glendale's opportunity to be a major player in the region's larger and hugely popular movement to improve the Los Angeles River as a natural, multi-purpose resource for this and future generations. Locally, the Riverwalk will complement Disney's ongoing upgrades as a partner in the city's San Fernando Road corridor redevelopment that abuts our homes. And it will energize property values and visual quality right where we enjoy our homes and horses in this historic area. It will provide needed and specific park amenities to Glendale's own unique equestrian neighborhood, helping to satisfy recreational requirements and a safer environment for riders and others of all ages who need to enjoy the great outdoors in the city. Residents would use the facility regularly and volunteer some of the maintenance to help keep costs down. Glendale has provided skateboarders with a skateboard park, chess players with a chessboard park, and other such projects designed to meet specific local needs. The Glendale Rancho has long needed an equestrian amenity, similar to longtime successful municipal ones in communities such as Lakeview Terrace, Agoura, Sunland, Pasadena, Moore Park, and Brentwood. Currently, residents must rely on already crowded Los Angeles city grounds and park trails using busy city streets and a single narrow bridge to access them. It's neither always feasible nor wise to subject horse and rider to same, and Glendale Rancho riders have increasingly demonstrated a need for a basic, close-by trailhead amenity, especially in their busy workaday family lives. There are some 100 horses in the Glendale Rancho, not counting Glendale equines that are boarded at the LA Equestrian Center. An equestrian trailhead at the foot of Garden Street's bridle path, serving as a starting point or terminus for riders, that is an integral part of the Riverwalk's beautiful landscape, will go a long, long way toward beautifying and benefiting an underserved area affected by blight. The Riverwalk project will be something Glendale can be proud of on both a human and specific community needs level, and on one that embraces the region's broader recreational and environmental aspirations. Please give it your blessing.
Thank you. Claire?
Question.
Mr. Yusefian and Mr. Mnuchin.
Joanna,
questions?
Ms. Hage, I hope you, as the speaker spoke, and based on some of the staff report, this walk is not designed for horses.
Yeah.
So, because you talked about, there's trails, and this is going to add on to the trails. This is not going to add on to the trails. You can't take horses on this thing. Okay.
Yeah, it's a trailhead, yeah.
Okay, so you won't.
Staging area.
All right. Just wanted to make sure
That's what I was going to ask as well. I mean, you can't ride the horses on the asphalt, right?
No.
Okay.
Well, you can ride horses on any surface, but
They have their own trails.
it's a staging area, but just the amenities alone, the natural, and I've ridden my bicycle all the way down to the 110 in these very sites that were shown you earlier tonight, and it is going to be such a plus for that area. It really is. In all areas, everything, it's going to be
The LA
Thank you.
Equestrian Center has their own trails that border the rivers.
But you have to be
Channels.
a member of the equestrian center to use them, so.
To ride in any of those trails?
To ride within the equestrian, use their arenas,
Oh, yeah,
any
but
of their facilities.
they have trails. All those trails that they have, that all belongs to them
There's a
only?
peripheral trail around the equestrian center, which
I
is
used-
open to the public.
I'd ridden it before.
And then there's trails in Griffith Park, which you access by a little skinny bridge.
Right.
But for people in our immediate Rancho Glendale area, not the Burbank Rancho, they're pretty forced to be on this crowded Easter field, or it's a real traffic jam and a lot of intersections to cross and urban
Didn't
kind of
realize.
entanglements.
Okay.
Thank you.
Lisa Dyer? Huh? That's it. Alyssa?
Allison.
Allison.
Oh, Allison. Sorry.
Allison Dyer. I live at 1316 Randall Street. And I've been to, I think, all the meetings in regards to the garden, to the Riverwalk project. And I've lived at my residence for about 7 years now. And I actually used to walk my dogs down along the riverbed, which I don't do that anymore because it's gotten to be so completely scary and horrible down there. And I was looking at the slideshow, and it actually just looks like one of the worst neighborhoods probably in town now. And I just wanted to come down and put in a voice to support, or hopefully, put in a word that you guys would maybe put in a good vote to move forward on this project. The area, that one stretch along the river has turned into such basically just transients live down there now. And at the end of our street, it sort of dead ends there at Pauline Garden. It's really gotten quite kind of dangerous to just even at the end of the park down there, even to walk our dogs in the park or be in the park has become kind of scary, because down in the river now, since there is no attention paid to that area, people are living down there, transients are living down there, and they kind of filter through the park down into the river. And so that comes up through the park and into our neighborhood a little bit. And it would just be nice to kind of do a little something to that area and help our neighborhood out a little bit. Anyway.
Thank you.
That was it. Thanks.
Unfortunately, those transits will probably die in a flood event.
Well,
They get out before it
Well,
comes.
I think they get out when the river gets big. I think
let
they
me
usually climb out of
give
there.
you
a little
one
bit.
example. I was working, we were tearing up the riverbed down around 3rd or 4th Street in L.A. in August. A thunderstorm hit in the mountains up here.
Oh, and a flood came.
30 minutes later, the water was down there. All the equipment was washed downstream, and we lost 3,000 miles of the invert of the channel. 30 minutes. They're living up in the wash up here.
Well, they're
Much
living-
shorter a time to get there. So,
They're living in the wash, but they're also living underneath the bridge.
yeah, I know all about that, but
And
ones
they're
living down
also-
below, they're really taking a risk.
And also, you were talking about how the fire patrol comes down there a lot. They access the river from a little bit farther up towards the bridge rather than down underneath the bridge down there. They have all their...
There's access ramps scattered all up and down the flood control channel.
Right.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. There's a motion and a second on what?
I just want to say a few words.
Oh, Mr. Quintero.
Yeah, I am very, very happy that we finally reached the design stage, and hopefully it'll be quick, because as the speakers pointed out, this is just one link. The rest of the river is getting done, so eventually you should be able to ride your bike all the way from this little park to literally downtown Los Angeles, right along the riverfront. So it's going to offer incredible recreational opportunities for everyone, from Glendale, from Los Angeles, et cetera. So it's great. I think it's going to turn out really good.
There's no other comments. There's a motion and a second on what one, Artie?
That was just 8A1.
Just 8A1?
Just the neck deck.
Okay. Roll call.
Council members Manukian?
Yes.
Najarian?
Yes.
Quintero?
Yes.
Yusefian?
Aye.
Mayor Weaver?
Aye. Okay, now we have 2, 3, and 4. Mr. City Attorney, acting. You can do them all at once.
Move 8A, 2, 3, and 4.
Second.
Roll call.
Council members Manukian?
Yes.
Najarian?
Yes.
Quintero?
Yes.
Yusefian?
Aye.
Mayor Weaver?
Aye. Next, please.
Good luck.
8B is Director of Planning regarding consideration of a time limit for the condominium conversion general plan density waiver for an existing 28-unit apartment building located at 601 Palm Drive, and discussion of proposal to provide financial contribution to Habitat for Humanity in consideration for density waiver. At 8B1, motion granting additional time for property owner to meet the condition of the density waiver for condominium conversion. At 8B2, motion denying the granting of additional time for property owner to meet the condition of the density waiver for condominium conversion and rescinding the previous decision. And at 8B3, motion to continue with direction to provide report and analysis of financial contribution proposal.
Okay, with that, I'll go to Mr. Starbird, who's going to go to.
Well, let me introduce this item by way of background. The City Council previously approved a density waiver with conditions for the proposed condo conversion at 601 Palm Drive. It was requested that we place the matter on the agenda for the council to consider a termination date to that. In the intervening time, we and you became aware that the owner has made a proposal to Habitat for Humanity on the Kenwood Drive project to essentially have an in lieu payment to them for the 4 units that would be required to be provided in his own project. We have expanded the notice given on the agenda so you can discuss that, but I have to note that we received a copy of that proposal just Friday, and so although you've received a copy of it and we've agendized the matter so you can discuss it more broadly, the staff hasn't had an opportunity to evaluate that, and you do not have a staff report on that aspect of it. So you really have 2 matters before you. One is the termination to the conditional waiver. The other is the
Pertaining to the CDB.
The other is the matter of the proposal to Habitat. Laura, am I going to you now?
Yes, although you just gave all my
Just have
presentation. Thanks.
Well, thank you.
I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have on the project.
Like that. Mr. Yusefian.
Just for the purpose of the public who did not get the letter and did not know what was going on, could you let the public, I'm assuming you have the letter?
I do not have the letter.
You don't have the letter. Okay, then I guess you're off the hook, and Mr. Starbird will do that for you.
I actually don't know if I have the letter. There were actually 2 letters that we received. We received a letter from Mr. Kazazian representing the owners of the condominium or the apartment complex at 601 Palm. I had actually earlier received a copy of the letter from Habitat, and also a copy of a letter that Mr. Kazazian gave to Habitat that actually spelled out proposed terms for the payment of what was proposed to be a payment of $250,000 to Habitat to support the Kenwood project. And to them, he proposed that be in 3 installments, a third at the time that the waiver is granted by the city, a third roughly a year later by the end of 2007, as I recall, and roughly a third payment to them by the end of 2008. That's really all the information we have on the proposal. The proposal was that simple, which was a payment to Habitat for $250,000 upon the granting of the waiver by the City Council.
Okay.
Mr. Quintero.
Well, look, before we talk about the waiver, the issue I have is the owners, these property owners, along with a group of other property owners attempting to convert their apartment to condominiums, pretty much presented the City Council with all of the necessary documentations. In addition to that, the planning person in charge of this particular issue, Wolfgang Kraus, verified that the applicant spoke to him on February 2005 to discuss conversion of the building. Phone records showing calls to the planning department on January 31, 2005, February 16, 2005 were also provided, in addition to other documents that he provided. So that night, I didn't understand, and I still don't, why this particular property owner has to provide affordable housing or give an in lieu fee to the to Habitat for Humanity. So that's the first issue that I want to settle. If he came in with all of the documentation, just like all of the other condo conversion property owners. Why is he being singled out as having to provide affordable housing? The other property owners did not have to provide affordable housing. Why him? So that's the first question that I have.
Mr. Najarian, would you like to?
Well, my response is that that issue has been settled. There was a motion for reconsideration, if I'm not mistaken. That motion did not pass. To rehash the rationale behind our decision back in June is not germane to our proceedings at this point. And correct me if I'm wrong. Unless there's a motion, Mr. Quintero, I think, would like to reopen the rationale and the discussion as to our initial determination as to this. Unless there's a motion to reconsider, and that motion is seconded and passed, any discussion as to the underlying decision-making which we made is just not germane at this point.
Well, the difference is that in the report, it says the items in bold were not included in the previous submittals, and I assume the items in bold that perhaps we could discuss are the inspection report from the termite company, Wolfgang Krause's verification.
Mr. Mayor, I believe that's the copy. That is a copy of the report from the June 9, which
that's
Mr. Najarian is
the
referring
report
to.
from the June 9 meeting. That's not the report. If I can, that's not the report that's currently before you. That was just the background that we attached to the staff report. The staff report for this item just raised the issue that the City Council had not set a termination date to the previous waiver, which had the conditions attached to it. We provided the staff report from the June meeting. Mr. Najarian's referencing that back in June you had that conversation about whether or not it should be granted with or without conditions, and the council's conclusion was to grant it, but with the conditions that were spelled out. And that was the staff report that was provided back in June. I think there is a question relative to the agenda item, whether or not it's broad enough for the council to go back and reconsider whether or not to take up the matter of the conditions that were originally attached to the waiver.
And Mr. Mayor, Mr. Starbird, I would have some concerns about that because the agenda item is rather specific to looking at the particular condition related to affordable housing, not the overall issue of the waiver itself and the condition that was imposed. And whether to put a time limit on, specifically not to reconsider that condition as a whole.
If there's no other question at this time, I do have a speaker. Arm Kazazian. 5 minutes enough?
I don't believe so, no.
6 minutes? 7?
There's two issues in here. I like to...
Your name first for the record.
Aram Kazazian.
How much time would you like?
I like to, I think we need like 15 minutes at least.
15?
Yes, thank you. I think the issue is over here. I'd like to take one issue at a time. First is the contribution. If we can get that resolved, we don't have to go into the time limit, because the time limit is very, very clear from the tape that I have, also in the letter that I turned over to the planning department, also to Mr. Starbird on Title I, Chapter 6, 59.2 to 59.9 seconds. It clearly states a 2-year time limit, with Mr. Starbird saying it, Mr. Bob Yusufian saying it, and it was voted on a 2-year time limit for me to comply. So that's clear. I have the DVD. We can play it if you want to. That will take a couple of minutes to play. But otherwise, I like to really go back and just concentrate on the issue in front of us for the contribution. If we could resolve that, we don't have to go into any further into that one. We have made an offer, and I would like to just concentrate on the offer. The offer is for $250,000 to be contributed to the Habitat for Humanity, and I believe Habitat for Humanity is over here. They have agreed. We've discussed the terms, and we're honored what we have said. We'll always do so, and we're an honorable family, and our family will pay that to get this resolved and concluded with. So we'd appreciate into going that first, and if you have any questions on that matter, I'll be more than glad to answer.
Mr. Yusefian?
I have a couple of questions, and maybe somebody from Habitat will be helpful to also be here to answer, because the twofold. This is a deal between two parties. So one thing I want to know is you're offering $250,000, and was Mr. Starbird accurate as far as the timing of how the payments will take place?
Correct. That's what was discussed with Habitat for Humanity during the negotiation time, and we put that on paper and delivered to Habitat for Humanity to get that done. There was also another letter that I read last time over here that was brought to Mr. Starbird last Wednesday. You should have that letter too. I don't know if you have it or not, but it was time-stamped, received by your office too.
That's the actual proposal.
Actual
To the
proposal,
city,
yes.
Yeah, I mentioned we have two letters, one that was delivered to us, one which was a copy of the letter that he gave to Habitat. The first letter from the owners of the apartments, Kazazians, was the $250,000 offer to as a proposal to meet the council's desire to have the 4 units made available. The second was not delivered by Mr. Kazazian. It was given to me by Habitat, which was a letter that he gave to them that spelled out the terms of the $250,000. I would note because I kind of see two issues here. One is whether or not you're willing to have I'll call it a proposal that provides units someplace else as opposed to in the project. That's kind of question number one. Is the Habitat mechanism the appropriate mechanism in the council's mind? Number two. And then three, is the amount adequate as you see it? As I've indicated to Habitat, if all of that is acceptable to you, I think we would encourage you that the terms between Habitat and Kazazian shouldn't just be between the two of them. The city would want to ensure that there is security to back up those payments, because at the end of the day you will have granted a waiver, and the matter at that point doesn't just then get left between Habitat and Mr. Kazazian, because we have a stake in making sure those payments are actually made as well. So we would also want in some way to be a party to ensure that if indeed the amount is adequate to you, the terms are adequate to you, and using Habitat as a mechanism is adequate to you, that we'd want to make sure that security is in place as well.
And you have not, staff has not evaluated this yet.
No, we have what you have. I mean, we have the two letters. We have done a little bit of work just kind of quickly looking at the issue of the economics, which is one of the questions I think you'd want to consider, the mechanism, the economics, and whether or not you're even willing to allow this process or this idea which would allow them to meet the affordability of the units in a different project.
My second question is, now that we're clear about the mechanism, has Habitat accepted the tree payment schedule, and has your attorneys and their attorneys gotten together and talked about how this is going to be written in a legal format?
As far as I know, first question, Habitat has accepted the terms. We have talked about that. As far as I know, if there is something changed, I'm not sure of. No, we have not got the attorneys together. So if you do have a consensus today or vote today, I'll be more than glad to sit down and work the terms with them, or with also Mr. Garcia too. I have no problem with doing that. And we'll work those out.
So you're waiting to see what the outcome of this meeting is before the three attorneys get together and work out all the legalese. Am I correct?
Correct, yes. I'll be more than glad to work anything that's fair to all parties, yes.
Okay. Mr. Starbird?
Mr. Mayor, on that, if I guess thinking through the options you have, if the council were to conclude that this concept seems to be acceptable, then I think we'd want to have you not take action on the waiver until we actually had legal sit down with Habitat and Mr. Kazazian and work out all of that paperwork and the security mechanism and all that. Then we could bring all of that back to you.
Mm-hmm.
And again, that assumes that you'd find that all of the other components are acceptable.
What's our subsidy for an affordable unit on the average?
Well, as you know, it probably depends on the nature of the leverage that we're able to accomplish. On an ownership unit, as staff was pointing out to me in the last couple of days,
on ownership units, it's very difficult to achieve a low income level. You generally think of it as moderate income, and at that moderate income level is a mortgage that could be supported of about $180,000 or so. And a sale price would probably be in the low 200s. It generally costs us, depending on the amount of leveraging that we can do for a project like that, in the range of anywhere for an ownership project in the range of the low 100,000s for the most part, 100 to 125,000. I'm trying to recall. I don't know, is Madeline here or Peter? Peter, you're here. Peter, why don't you come up for a second? The Dorn Street project is probably one of the most recent ownership projects we've had, and that one actually has a benefit of being leveraged with new market tax credits. So it's been a pretty favorable ratio.
What I'm getting at is we're talking 4 affordable units.
Mm-hmm.
If it's at 100,000 on the low end, that's 400,000. The offer being made is 250,000.
That's probably a good rule of thumb. We're in the low 100s of subsidy with probably pretty good leverage. What's Dorn costing us?
Dorn has an additional $1 million worth of leverage coming in for new market tax credits. Okay. If I'm not mistaken, the subsidy is around $140,000 to $150,000. And you noted correctly that that's a moderate income project.
So the 100,000 is a low number to work from.
It's a low number when it is leveraged with other funding sources. Typically, the home ownership has no other funding source to leverage. So typically what we look at is an affordable sales price for whatever income category we're looking to serve versus what the market sales price would be. And then that gap, Mr. Starber had mentioned approximately $190,000 would be considered affordable for a 2-bedroom condo. That's a purchase price with assuming a 10% down payment. If a sales price is $400,000, then the difference of $210,000 would be the gap that the Housing Authority would typically fill on a project.
Well, the comparison should be Habitat for Humanity.
Mm-hmm.
Is that Dorn project a Habitat for Humanity?
No.
It's not. So what is it for Habitat for Humanity?
Habitat for Humanity's gap is, at this point, is $1.5 million, which is land acquisition. It's roughly $136,000.
I don't mean on this project. I mean on the project on, say, Pacific, for instance.
Vine Pacific is an assistance gap of about $200,000, of which $100,000 was provided to the owners as a silent second.
If I can, I think where Ms. Quintero is going is something we've also thought of. There's no reason why Mr. Kazazian shouldn't be able to utilize the kind of leverage that we would if we were supporting a project. And as I understand it, and there's representatives of Habitat here, but for example, in this project, I think they were anticipating needing to raise, for example, $100,000 per unit, along with our contribution of the land, along with contributions of in-kind, in order to get to a mortgage level for the buyers that would meet their needs. And I think Habitat had $100,000 a unit was their target that they were striving for, that they needed to raise in order to fund each of those units of 11 units?
Correct.
If I recall. So they were looking to try and raise $1,100,000 for the project.
We're talking about 4 affordable units, is what we said. I read that to be 400,000 equivalency. If 250,000 is being provided to Habitat, that's not matching the investment of 400,000 or the 4 affordable on Palm. Am I missing something, Mr. Yousefian?
Yes, I think what we're missing in here is we're talking about affordability gap on a project if we build it today. In this scenario, we're talking about an affordability gap on a project that was built in late 80s? Late 80s, when construction cost was lower. It's like the difference between subsidizing a new car or a used car. There's a big difference. And in the past, we have had first-time homebuyers programs, and we have been able to get them into condo conversions through first-time homebuyer programs because we were able to buy those units for a cheaper price. We were unable to put any of them in any brand-new condos that were built by any private developer that the city has gone out there and done unless they subsidize it to a huge amount. So the difference in prices are going to be different because they're different products. They're not the same. Those units, after they're converted, are not going to be sold at the same rate as if you just build them today, they're brand new, nobody lived in them. They will be a lot higher because they'll be built in different standards too. So there's all of that that we need to kind of keep in mind. So I'm looking at it realistically, what those 4 units would have generated was maybe about $79,000 a unit. That's pretty much for an affordable that is in 1985 built. That's what it would be.
How much?
About $79,000
If we sold it today?
per unit.
And what
Affordability
construction
gap.
cost?
Affordability gap. That's, I'm talking about the subsidy. For a conversion, for an old conversion.
We haven't done a conversion in terms of affordable housing. So
Well, we have put people, first-time home buyer programs, we have put them in apartments that were converted. I know at least 3 of them that went into my old place that I used to manage, to Verdugo Penthouse Apartments, and then later on became Verdugo Penthouse Apartments. I mean, the condominiums across the street from Glorietta Park. I was 20-year-old when I was managing it, by the way. So
Mr. Zovak?
So that's...
Place people in affordable housing?
We have a first-time homebuyer program in which
program,
applicants are eligible to go out and purchase any unit that is being offered for sale in the open
But
market.
the first-time home buyer is not a subsidy program. It's
It's a silent second mortgage program.
right.
It could be
It's
considered a
second-
subsidy
right.
that's being
It's a silent
provided.
second mortgage
Yeah.
where we get our investment plus some equity back.
Correct.
At one point.
Right.
Right.
But the
So-
price still has to be low enough for them to be able to
Right.
afford it. So
The
the
market
ones
price.
that are able to get those units, because their silent second is small, because we don't go over 50,000 or 75,000
75.
now.
So
But the only way they could afford those is they buy those conversions. They don't go buy the brand-new ones. They can't even buy a single-family house.
There's been a progression in the program. When it was first established, single-family homes were being
Right.
purchased. Then the real estate market got tight. Then it started to become a condo program, high-end condo program. Then as it got tighter, it became mid-range condo
Now
program.
it's become low.
And now it's not, to be honest, with the $75,000 subsidy only, it is very difficult for someone to go out. Typically, they're looking at trying to purchase, if the purchase price would work, most likely a small one-bedroom condominium. And that's just not the product that our applicants want, to be honest with you.
Mr. Najarian.
Well, I think we're getting confused with the numbers here. Ms. Yates came before us with great intentions and discussed the Habitat project. In that project, the city was going to donate the land to them. They were going to obtain federal tax credits. I forget which percent it was going to be. And they needed 11 units built. Each unit was 100,000 additional had to be put into it. This is why and it's currently an ongoing campaign. So each unit, along with the city's land subsidy and the leveraging from the tax credits, was going to require $100,000.
For subterranean.
Just a minor correction, they don't rely on tax credits. They don't apply for tax credits.
Okay, that's
So
not a
they
tax
rely on our land. They look for direct contributions of $100,000 a unit. Then they look for in-kind contributions, material contributions, and the likes. But
Like Home Depot,
they're not in the
gives
tax
them
credit
the
market.
lumber and
Right.
people working on it.
Our decision, council's decision, was to grant a waiver to Mr. Kazazian if he made 4 units available to low or moderate income residents. The current proposal of $250,000 only gets you 2.5 units in the Habitat project. We wanted 4. Now, in addition, regardless of what we did with Mr. Kazazian, it is my full belief that Habitat would and will raise the $1.1 million necessary to complete their 11 units. Our 4 units from Mr. Kazazian in this narrow look at affordable housing would have created 15 units, 11 for Habitat, 4 by Mr. Kazazian. At this point, we're only creating the subsidy of $250,000, the grant, the donation. And I'm sure Ms. Yates would have said, hip, hip, hooray, even if there was $100,000 given to her, or $50,000. I mean, they are diligently searching for funds in a tight charitable market here. But that 250,000 is only getting her 2.5 units. We wanted 4.
I concur in that.
I mean, this is, we can talk about today's dollars, tomorrow's dollars. I don't want to drag Habitat into this. They certainly are doing their very best. To say that they have approved the deal with Mr. Kazazian, the deal is that he's going to give them money and they're going to accept it. And that deal would be accepted for any amount, even if you were to write a $1,000 check. There's no doubt in my mind that Ms. Yates would say, great, thank you very much. We appreciate your assistance in this. But the deal was between Mr. Kazazian and ourselves and our Housing Authority and the City Council. It's my opinion at looking at this that the $250,000 is just too low of a contribution to create 4 affordable units, which is what we asked for, which is what we voted for.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Youssef.
I have a question from Mrs. Zovak. Last time Mr. Yates talked, she says that she had raised about $350,000 approximately so far. And there's still, after some people hoping that they will get some money, but cash in hand, about $350,000. They have to raise about $1.1 million for that 11 unit because of the subterranean. On that land, I want to tax your memory, on that land, if they are unable to put the subterranean, how many units can they build?
In an at-grade scenario,
At grade.
I would say that number is probably half, 6 to 7 units.
So they will be able to put about 6 units on that at grade, half of it.
Approximately.
11. Actually, it's a little bit over than a half. Okay. Now, what happens if they're unable to raise the money? First of all, how long do they have to raise the money?
They
And
actually
number
have until January, the
Okay.
next few
And-
months, to
and-
be able to come back and report back to the authority on the progress of
January of what? 2007?
2007.
Okay. And what if they cannot raise the money?
Then we need to make a determination at that meeting whether or not to continue to allow them additional time to continue fundraising, whether or not to terminate the ENA and pursue another project,
Okay.
or come up with another alternative in terms of additional housing authority assistance maybe to make the project work.
Okay. And at that point, let's say they weren't able to do that. Would we then move in a direction of maybe having it at grade?
That could be one of the...
Because it'll be cheaper?
That
They
could be
won't
one
have-
of the proposals brought to the authority by staff.
Okay. If it was 6 units at grade on that site, the way we have been doing business with Habitat is we give them the land and that's it. There will be no additional subsidy from the housing, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And so they would just have to go out there and just do it at grade and just have 6 units. So at that point, we're going to lose 5.
Correct.
Okay. And that's the thing that, I have to think, while some of my colleagues think from academic point of view, I look at things from a builder's point of view. And I have to look at the real possibilities in the real scenario at the time that we're playing. At this time, in order for them to build this project, they would have to raise another $750,000. That's what they're short, right?
Correct.
750,000 plus 350, that's almost 1.1 million. So at the time that there aren't too many purses being opened to give that type of money, I thought $250,000 goes away, that they're still going to have to raise another $500,000. Now, if they don't raise this money, you're not going to have 15 affordable. What you're going to end up having is maybe Mr. Kazazian's 4, that is if he goes through and converts, and 5 or 6. So those are the real possibilities in the real world, because we are talking about a nonprofit organization going out this time that money's tight, economy is starting to slow down, for them to raise $350,000, and they have worked diligently. I don't think anybody has worked as hard as they have, getting to Disney, putting people in there, and doing everything under the sun that they can do. And there are other people standing there saying, can you show more money coming in? And if they're able to do that, they can maybe get the other ones. And we could really have a possibility, a good possibility of getting 11 affordable units that are brand new. Or we could say no to Mr. Kazazian, and I don't know if he will even convert, because now that I heard what conversions do these days is with the market going south, if you don't sell them, you have to pay the homeowner association for it.
Mr. Mayor,
So-
let's settle this.
Yes, I'd like to settle this.
Let me make a comment.
Mr. Mnuchin.
Going back to what Mr. Quintero was saying, Mr. Kazazian, you didn't really do any work to start this conversion before we changed the law. Okay, between you and me, I know that, you know that. You might have thought about it, but you didn't do any work on it. Initial paperwork that you gave us was a painting contract that had nothing to do with a contract with the conversion. And the pest control or whatever that was, the termite report was really not there. And then a couple of weeks later, you came back and you told us that Wolfgang, you had spoken to Wolfgang on the phone, and he said okay, but that for me that was not enough of a incentive for me to vote to allow your project. However, I greatly support Habitat for Humanity. Okay. Second, there are some individuals who are sitting there, Paula and Art Devine, that have done so much work for the city, and they have done so much for Relay for Life, and their support for Relay for Life and their demeanor in the way they approach every issue and the way they give back to this community, I will vote for the $250,000 to go to the Habitat for Humanity, however way they wish it, and let's vote for this and get it over with. We just keep hashing this over and over again, and I will do it for Habitat.
Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Najarian.
I appreciate Mr. Mnuchin's comments, but personally I think it is an outrage and a dangerous precedent for us to set, to let individuals who have proposals from the city to escape their obligations, as we as the City Council have duly voted on, by the payment of funds to very worthwhile charities. Because tomorrow we're going to find someone else coming up with a proposal to escape an obligation that we have decided with a contribution to a very worthwhile charity. It can be the Red Cross, it could be the Orphans Fund, it can be whatever. The amount of money which is being proposed is inappropriate. We're letting Mr. Kazazian off on the cheap, with all due respect, Mr. Kazazian. It bothers me that that Habitat was, I feel they were used in this manner to come up to try and pull an end run around council's decisions. I think this is a very, very terrible precedent to set. If the council decides that that's the way they're going to vote, I am going to go kicking and screaming, and with a warning that this is a complete outrage to me. Without a report from the staff as to the appropriateness of this amount of money, we're pulling the numbers out of thin air. Absolutely inappropriate, an outrage, and this is not something that we usually do. We don't always get along. We fight and scream sometimes, but we always wait for the facts, and we make our decisions on the facts, rightly or wrongly. We're not even waiting for the facts here. We're going ahead and rubber stamping this under the guise of the charity to Habitat for Humanity. And I don't get angry very often, but guys, I think we're making a big mistake that we're going to regret, and it's going to open up a Pandora's box of people who are going to come before the council and ask for relief because we've let Mr. Kazazian off the hook in this manner.
Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Seven, do you have a motion?
Yes, I have a motion that the staff get together with Mr. Kazazian and his attorneys, and also with the attorneys of Habitat, and to go over all the legalese that is required to do this type of a thing. I want to know all the facts. I want to know how this is going to take place. I want all the protection to be worked out. And after all that is done, I want it to come back to City Council for a final vote.
So we're not going to move on A, B, 1, 2, or 3. You've created a new motion.
I created a new motion.
Okay. Is there a second on Mr. Yusefian's new motion? Dies for lack of a second.
I'll second that.
You'll second it. As for me, I'm in your camp, Mr. Najarian. I totally agree with you. Mr. Quintero?
Well, I want to get back to what, for me, is the original outrage. And that was a 4-1 vote, by the way. But to me, the original outrage was that we treat every class of property owner that comes here differently. I think he provided the same documentation that everyone else did. And once again, I rely on Mr. Wolfgang Kraus, because he also agrees that this gentleman attempted to convert his apartment to a condominium. So to me, that's... Now, as for Habitat for Humanity, I support anything they do at any cost, literally. I don't think there's a better program for affordable housing in the city of Glendale than Habitat for Humanity. So
Is there a
I'll
motion?
probably vote for Mr. Yusefian's motion, but I did want to document what I think was the original outrage for the property owners.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. Roll call.
Could Mr. Yusefian please restate his motion? So
Pretty
I'm
long.
clear on it?
The motion is that staff get together with Mr. Kazazian and also with Habitat for Humanities and their attorneys, work out the legalese in order to do this, and then re-agendize this so it would come to us so we can vote on this.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr.
if I
Starbird.
can, Mr. Yusefian, included in that would be implied that the basic structure and amounts subject to legal saying it can be adequately secured, et cetera, and papered would be acceptable.
I don't know what the legal structure is. I mean, with the payment terms and everything, but
The payment terms were
the sooner the better.
Yeah, the payment
okay.
terms were as I related. They were 80, roughly 1/3 of the $250,000 at, I believe, by the end of this calendar year, assuming the City Council grants the waiver. December 15, was it? That there was another third payment a year later and another third payment a year following that.
My goal, Mr. Mayor, is
Not-
on the
not
terms,
for you.
we
Wait,
need to
one
make
at a time.
sure that the money is in
Right.
at the time that the Habitat needs it to construct that project. I mean, to me, that is the
When are they
important
going
part.
to need it?
I don't know, and that's something that they need to get
I don't
together.
work
I
with
don't know.
January. Peter said by January of 2007.
No.
Peter?
No, January was reporting back to the authority on their fundraising efforts.
But they're not
Ability to raise.
starting the project.
They're not starting the project now.
Okay.
When would they need the money to start?
Well, we were hoping that they, and we continue to hope that they come back with a positive report on the fundraising. If that were the case, then we would make sure that they are pursuing the project through the entitlement process. Once they complete that, then we'll come back to execute the DDA, and then they will be able to begin
It's
construction.
likely to take 2 years for completion
For completion? Definitely.
Completion of what?
of the
Construction.
project, construction.
Then when
So the
would they
money
need
needs
the
to be in
funds?
before it's.
Again, let me.
Within a year, they would need the funds then.
Well, let staff work on it. That's
Yeah,
what the
then-
motion
That's why
is.
And
I'm
then,
saying
then,
go back
then
and
in
work.
addition to adequately securing the payments, which was my initial concern, then we would also confirm as part of Mr. Yusefian's motion with Habitat that the timing of the funds will be appropriate to meet their needs for the construction of the project.
Mr. Mayor,
I would like Habitat to receive the funds before they break ground.
we need to have direction on that.
They may not need that because in a big construction,
Mr.
they
Youssef,
have different prices. So
I'd like to get to the motion. There's a motion.
I think let the staff work it out and come back with the details to us.
Let's have a roll call on the motion.
Councilmember Manukian.
To a certain, if I'd like to make a comment before I vote on this. To a great extent, I agree with my colleague, Mr. Najarian, and only Mr. Najarian.
I agree with him.
I agree with him as well. I do this I do have a bad feeling about this, but I will vote for it, and I will ask a question from because I don't want to set a precedent. I don't think there are any other condo conversion projects that are coming in front of council for approval before. Are there any?
Right now, I have at least 3 people who've made inquiries, and I believe we may have as many as 7 or 8 coming in.
I just might add, it does seem to me, though, with the time that's gone by, as more time goes by, it's going to be harder and harder to prove up your case. But that's a decision for the city council.
Well, I don't want this to set any kind of precedent. If I have another individual who goes to any other nonprofit and says, well, I'll make a contribution if you allow me to go through, I will tell you now that vote is no. Just so that's clear. And yes on the motion.
Well, I have a legal question for the planning director. To the best of my knowledge, none of the other people that came before us were asked to contribute any affordable housing units. Is that correct? This is the only property owner that was asked to contribute.
That's right.
Okay, I just want to put that on the record. This is the only property owner.
Wait.
Yeah,
Okay, Mr. Manukian.
Oh, he keeps throwing this out there, but other projects had canceled checks for architects and for other expenses. He had nothing. Okay, all he has is one phone call for a few minutes with one of the staff members. None of the other documentations, as I said earlier, proved anything. So you keep throwing that out there. He didn't have the same documentation as the others did.
I think he did.
No, he didn't.
Okay, let's stop the argument. Let's do a roll call.
Councilmember Manukian, yes?
Yes.
Najarian?
No.
Quintero?
Yes.
Yusefian?
Aye.
Mayor Weaver?
No. Next, please.
Nine is a hearing. Director of Planning continued from 8/15/06 regarding appeal of conditional use permit, case number PCUP 2005-017, located at 2331 Ramsey Drive. Motion adopting the findings and condition of approval as written by the city attorney in support of approving the conditional use permit.
Okay, this is a public hearing too. Mr. Manukian.
Yes, I wasn't here for this public hearing and when it was first heard, so I will not participate, and I will abstain from the vote.
So you're leaving the dais?
Yeah, and good night.
There's nothing else after this.
This is the last item on the agenda.
Hasta la vista.
Maybe I just had a comment, too.
Yes,
You
Mr.
held the
Garcia.
hearing on whatever date it was, and I believe the hearing was closed and the matter was continued to direct the city attorney to
Well, the hearing
prepare the
was
findings.
closed.
So it's your discretion to only take testimony with respect to the findings and the comments that
Okay,
Public
so
Works
I
staff and planning staff
have,
will be making.
I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 speakers again after the hearing is closed. So it's my discretion whether I want to allow these 6 speakers to speak.
I think you have to let them speak, but they can be limited to the findings and the discussion that planning and public works will probably be addressing.
Don't hold your breath.
and
Take in
6,
more.
7, 8,
Oh, he's the applicant.
and they can only speak to what?
It's your discretion, but you can, what I'm saying is you can limit them to what is in the findings and what is being presented by staff, and if the applicant has
That
additional
will
information.
be impossible.
Understood, but I'm just saying that's,
But I want to understand what we're doing here tonight. We're getting a report on the oak tree situation and what potential damage or lack of damage would occur there, because the road will have to be widened and improved, including utilities, et cetera. The other item is the CUP on the slope, because it exceeds that criteria.
Right.
And the cubic yards of earth movement, it exceeds that.
Right.
We are not the design review board.
Right.
they may take it apart when they see it. So we should not be sitting here and designing the project. We can comment on whether we're okay moving the 1,800 yards, and we can sit here and say it's okay to build a house on a slope greater than that permitted, right?
That's correct.
Because I can see where this is going to go. We're going to get into the design again. How the house ought to be moved and sat on the lot and et cetera. That's not within our, theoretically, our jurisdiction here tonight. Okay?
That really wasn't the direction of the council when it made the motion
No.
at the last hearing. It really was to, it just set a requirement that there be a two-car garage that's detached, and
Okay.
the project still goes through design
So it's
review.
come back. There's an option B that has a detached garage. How far do we go in designing it? Ms. Wilkerson?
Well, I think the only advice I would give, in the context of the conditions you've written, you only need to feel comfortable that those conditions can be met, and the applicant's architect has provided you with some drawings, and as you indicated, one of the options shows a detached two-car garage can be provided, and the size of the house and the height of the house and the planting of trees, your other conditions are all reasonable
Okay,
conditions.
so if it-
Tonight, I think you only want to deal with presentation by staff on the impacts, potential impacts of the road and the utility work in the context of the oak trees, which you had expressed concern about. And if you can make the findings after hearing from the city engineer and Mr. McKinley, who are both here to give you any advice necessary. The finding says, in the event the Director of Public Works determines that the roadway on Ramsey Drive must be improved, it will be designed and constructed in a manner to avoid the impact to the existing oak trees along Ramsey Drive. I assume the construction of the road would also include the construction of the utilities, and so the two together, the utilities and road, is the issue that you wanted us to
Well, we
look
said
at.
a detached garage, and if Design Review Board says they don't agree with that, they have no option, because we've given direction.
That's correct.
So if we stick with what we said, it must be a detached garage.
That would be a condition of the approval, and the approval would not stand if it was not met. And on that very point, in past, the city attorney has spoken to the Design Review Board that they have no jurisdiction to overrule a variance or CUP specific to an item, that the zoning prevails, and the zoning direction would prevail, and the conditions would prevail. So they could only approve something that met these conditions.
Okay? Staff? Go.
Well, Mr. Mayor, members of council, Brad Collin, the case planner on the project. Just quickly read through this. As mentioned at the August 15th council meeting, the council denied the appeal of the subject conditional use permit and continued the hearing of this case to tonight's date, October 10th. At the August meeting, council directed the city attorney to draft findings of fact and conditions of support granting the conditional use permit consistent with council direction and the evidence in the record. Also during the August 15th meeting, the project architect requested time until this meeting to provide the council with some options that would address some of the council's concerns. Some of the council wanted the house to be modified such that the floor area was less than 3,500 square feet. Second, to have the height of the house no higher than 28 feet. And third, that the garage be detached from the house. In addition, some of the council members also wanted staff to look into the concern regarding the widening of Ramsey Drive and the protection of the existing oak trees located adjacent to Ramsey that would be impacted by the widening of the street. Additionally, some council members wanted to preserve the stream that is on the east of the subject property. The applicant has provided 4 options which were attached to each of your packets to address some of council's concerns. The applicant will be available to specifically discuss each option and to answer any questions the council may have. Staff would like to note that in each of the options that the applicant or architect has provided, that the floor area has been reduced to less than 3,500 square feet. In option A, for which was attached, the proposal is to keep the garage underneath the house but move it forward. Option B is to detach the garage and move it to the left of the house. Option C is to relocate the garage off of Barnett Drive. And option D is to reduce the garage to a two-car garage with a turnaround underneath the house as originally proposed. That concludes staff comments. The city engineer and Bill McKinley are in the audience, as well as the appellant and the architect.
Mayor?
And I've got a couple of slides. I'm sorry.
Mr. Yusefian.
I have a question
shows.
from staff. On any of these options, do all the options meet the zoning code requirement?
No.
And the grading zone requirements? I mean, grading code requirements?
In terms of grading, I'll defer that to Rubik. In terms of the zoning code, no. Because
Okay,
there's one
which
of the
ones
options that
don't-
shows the turning radius. I
Which
believe
ones
it's
don't meet that?
The option that shows the garage moving forward, which has a turning radius, and backup going into the 15-foot setback is prohibited.
Okay, so option A has a problem. Option B?
Option B could meet code. Staff would just need to make sure that it
Okay.
meets the height requirements.
And option C?
Option C may have some challenges with the height in terms of meeting code for height for the structure or the garage.
Okay. And as far as grading is concerned, I have a question from Mr. Gulanian.
Well, wait, he's going to give a speech anyhow.
Oh, he is?
Yes.
He's listed?
I want the engineering report. I haven't heard anything on the oak trees, the
Right.
utilities, nothing. So could he give his report first?
Okay, I'll wait for that.
Brad, you were just going to show a couple of slides?
I've got a couple slides just to kind of show where the trees are and the existing oak trees on Ramsey taken from Cascadia.
That's it?
That's basically it.
Yes. Bill McKinley took these slides. We thought they might make
What's all
the
that
road issue.
vegetation? Is that just ivy, or is it
On the
poison
ground.
oak, or ivy?
like ivy.
Poison ivy? No?
No, it's not
Regular
poison ivy,
ivy?
just
Okay.
regular.
Okay, good. You never know.
Leave that up there, but you can turn the lights up. Okay, now our city engineer. Tell us about the street widening. Having you give your name for the record.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, Rubik Golanian, city engineer. After council's meeting back in August, we met with the applicant's engineer to review the potential or possibility of shifting the roadway within the public right-of-way. Mr. Kasakian, if you can lift the screen.
I'm going to push it up.
Based on the dimensions that's shown on the GIS map, where the width of the right-of-way, available right-of-way, is concerned, shifting the roadway will not be feasible without impacting some other oak trees on the south side of the roadway. So there is no way to avoid impacting some existing oak trees.
You mean removal?
Impact and or removal, yes. Also, we discussed the intersecting angle of the driveway as it crosses Ramsey Drive. The engineer is confident that he can work with our requirement and achieve that needed angle. Yes, the perpendicular. There is also two issues as regards to the utilities that need to be extended, primarily the sewer and the water mains that are available on Cascadia Drive and Walk just north of Cascadia Drive for the water main stub. The water main stub is approximately 80 feet away from the nearest property line that needs to be extended, and the sewer line is approximately 180 feet away.
Could you show us on the map?
Sure.
Could you give, Artie, could you give him the mic? On the pointer.
So this, the sewer main ends here at Cascadia, where it intersects Ramsey Drive. The average depth between this manhole and the last manhole, the terminal manhole, is around 5 to 6 feet deep. So that needs to be extended to provide service to these properties. The water main stopped out at this walk. It's closer to the property. Nevertheless, it needs to be extended.
And where would the oak tree, could you show me where the oak trees were being affected?
The oak trees,
On the same map?
they're not shown on this map.
I know,
Where,
but
location-wise?
location-wise, where are they
There?
being affected? Is that
There's,
where you were
there's
saying?
an oak
that-
tree here, there's an oak tree here, there are oak trees here, there are oak trees here.
Yeah, but you said one area, if you shift it, still there's an area that's going to be affected. I want to
East.
know where it is.
South of the roadway, which are these, basically. That one and this one.
Okay. So it's going to be
And
right there.
To add, Mr. Yusefian, we really don't have the flexibility of a wide right-of-way to be able to shift it significantly.
Okay, so there is an area right there, and,
Yes, this green lines,
Okay.
I don't know if you can see it, these shows the existing right-of-ways.
okay.
And the
And
oak,
oak trees are inside the right-of-way.
they are inside or on the edge of the right-of-way.
And you can't shift the driveway. You can
The
shift
roadway?
the road. No.
The
Oh.
oak trees on both sides of the...
So you're basically,
Yeah.
okay.
See, okay, talk about the bridging.
The
Over.
the bridging over the oak tree root
Only-
system,
Yeah, which only satisfies one problem.
right? And we haven't looked at it in detail. We don't have any historical data. We have never built those bridges or ramping in the city. I don't know of any case in any other municipality has done it before. So, Public Works Director and I are hesitant to recommend such improvements in the public roadway. That will be the responsibility of the city to maintain and repair.
Okay, I'd like to ask an unrelated question to that.
Okay.
It's stated in the plans that due to a recent change in the engineering department, turnarounds are necessary for cars in the residential zones now. Is that a codified requirement?
It's not codified. However, our recommendation for hillside single-family developments are because of the nature of the steep driveways, that in order to back up onto a main street or a public roadway, the recommendation is for a turnaround.
Recommendation, even though there's thousands of homes right now without
Existing
turnarounds.
homes, correct.
And Mr. Mayor, currently, we just adopted a modification to the zoning which kept that language just as is, which is you don't need to have turnaround for residential.
According to the
uses.
plans, though, they say it's a new requirement.
Oh.
It's a recommendation by Engineering and Traffic Division for hillside single-family homes.
Yeah, but
Like you're going to really speed on that road. And you could back out onto that road. You're not going to have a lot of
Our
traffic.
concern is backing up onto the public road. Yes, exactly.
Backing onto a curve.
I do it every day.
It's easier on straight shot driveways, much difficult on curved driveways.
is this a
Yeah,
curved
well-
driveway?
That's going to be corrected. You
Yeah.
already stated that it'll come in perpendicular.
It'll be perpendicular where it intersects Ramsey Drive. But the driveway, as it originally was designed, it's curved.
Right.
So that's the concern. Backing up out of the garage all the way down on a downslope without line of sight onto Ramsey Drive.
Mhm.
That's the concern. Hence the recommendation for a turnaround.
Recommendation.
But option B takes care of it. I mean, option B deals with that.
Option
We don't
B
have that
does
problem.
show a turnaround.
So your recommendation is you can't recommend a particular way to do the roadway without damaging the oak tree roots.
I do not see a feasible
I'd
alternative.
like to ask Mr. McKinley that question. So I understand the oak tree sends down a taproot, and after that, the root structure is more spread out. I don't know the depth of the roots.
The normal average depth on the tree roots of the oak trees would typically be found in the first 36 to 48 inches of the soil.
Really?
And oak trees, only when they're saplings and they're seedlings, have taproots. Once
Right.
they mature,
Yeah,
they
you taught
actually
me that.
discard the taproot and create lateral roots.
Okay, so if you go and trench to put in sewer line, storm drain, utilities, that could vary anywhere from 3 to 6, 10 feet down.
Once you get down below 48 inches, it's really not going to matter. They can.
Yeah. The damage is done.
That's
So
correct.
no matter what depth we put utilities in, even if they're shallow, we're going to take out the root structure.
That's correct.
Two questions. Number one, can the oak tree live if its root structure is cut? According to these pictures, maybe 50% of the root structure removed. And secondly, stability of the tree if that kind of root structure damage is done.
Well, that's a very good point, and depending on where the improvements are directed will determine whether or not the tree's stability will be compromised. What I've done here, I surveyed the project, and there are a total of 14 mature protected oak trees that line this roadway. In fact, I brought an aerial survey with me, and I've plotted the trees on here if you'd like to look at it.
Yeah.
Okay. If I could.
So what's your best well, I don't know if it's advice or what is your best analysis?
Based upon the present conditions of the road, not taking into account the fact that the road would be expanded even further and may be directed closer to some trees and away from others, it appears as though if that road were paved at the present time with its current limits, there would be a total of 7 trees which would be highly impacted by these proposed improvements. There would be 4 trees which would be moderately impacted by these proposed improvements, and there would be 3 trees that would be classified as low impact.
Is that including the utilities, the road and utilities, or just the road?
It would be, at this point, it would be impossible for us to determine exactly the level of impact on the utilities without knowing precisely where the course of the utility trenching would be directed.
So I'm assuming those numbers would be just for the road then?
That's correct.
Thank you.
Okay, there'd be a lot more engineering work required to be able to continue your analysis.
That's correct. And I'm told that due to the nature of utilities, there's very little flexibility in these systems, so it doesn't allow you to direct the trenching basically between the 2 trees, so to speak, to create the maximum distance.
But they usually go in a straight line.
Well, yeah, we don't have that flexibility.
Okay. Any other questions right now? I
have a question.
Yes, Mr. Najarian.
Is there any scenario, I raised it last time, is there any scenario in which, under acceptable best practices, in which the road would not have to be paved with asphalt? An aggregate material or any other type of material which would not require the excavation for the underlayment and all that, that would be acceptable to the city and to you as the chief engineer?
Still got to widen.
Mr. Najarian, members of the council, the existing roadway as it stands is passable, but I cannot recommend any other alternatives except for a proper section of a base with asphalt for safe, navigable traffic, vehicular traffic.
What does that mean?
That means in order...
How thick is your base?
4 inches of asphalt over 6 inches of base.
So 10 inches.
Yes, sir.
Can the 10 inches be laid on top of what is existing, or you have to grade the existing?
I think we already talked about that.
Some grading will have to be performed to accommodate that 10-inch thick section.
And utilities still got to go under.
Can the utilities go down the center of the road, the existing road?
The water main pipes have more flexibility than sewer. Unfortunately, sewer pipes are rigid and they have to go in straight lines, and it will be dictated by the field conditions.
Yeah, but you have curves. I mean, you're still going to have to curve the sewer line.
We can't curve the sewer line, unfortunately, without the construction of sewer manholes in between the points of curvatures.
So if we're to go forward, what do we have on this, a neg deck? Well, where do we stand on the environmental? Because
There's a lot of new information that's come out just recently since the negative declaration was signed. I would feel that would be part of the reconsideration in this matter.
okay, so what are we doing here tonight? The conditional use is what we're looking at. We've heard the report on the engineering. So the reconsideration, now what are we talking to?
Well, Mr. Mayor, members of council, what's before you are the findings to approve the conditional use permit. And obviously, this discussion will have an impact on that discussion. And the environmental review is if there is a reconsideration of the council's decision.
So does somebody, for reconsideration, does that mean somebody that was on the winning side have to ask for reconsideration?
Yes. It's actually rescission because it's a subsequent meeting. I mean, if you got through the comments and the discussion ensued and the direction was to change the decision, there would be a motion to direct us to come back with a motion to rescind the action as well as a new findings to deny the CUP.
If we now believe it should not be a neg deck, that some form of environmental document needs to be done because of the impact on the oak trees, then one of us that voted for it would have to ask for the reconsideration to get to that point?
Well, can I add that it may not wind up being an environmental impact report if the applicant is able to show with more detailed work that the roadway and the utilities can be installed to the satisfaction of the city engineer.
That's a lot more engineering work.
Without having the impact on the trees. Based on the information at hand, I would say, we'd have to say it is a significant impact.
Probably a mitigated neg deck.
It is a mitigated
It
neg
is.
deck now, but this new information about the utilities and the road would suggest that there would be significant impacts that could not be mitigated. If they were able to provide additional information to show that the impacts could be mitigated to reduce the impact to be less than significant, then it could continue as a mitigated neg deck. But that information is not available at hand.
Roadway width,
Well,
curb, gutter,
Mr. Mayor, members of council, our requirement is for a 20-foot wide roadway plus curb and gutter.
curb and gutter. So we are going to impact oak trees from the curb, or the street widening too. Significant impact.
At present, it appears that the impacts are significant. And as I said, though, I would not rule out the possibility that they could find some other means of doing it. But based on what's at hand today, my advice would be to determine that the mitigated negative declaration is insufficient.
So
as it
if
stands.
we adopt the motion here tonight, motion adopting the findings and condition approval, then we're ignoring the fact that we now probably have a significant impact on the oak trees.
I would add, if the council agrees that there are significant impacts related to the project as a result of what's required to grade the road and provide the utilities, then it shouldn't adopt the findings. It should direct us to go back and update essentially the environmental that's been
In
done.
other words, reconsider.
Yes.
Do you know who voted for and against the last time?
It was a 3 to
Or
1.
was-
Yeah, it was 3 to 1.
Who was the one?
Mr. Quintero was no.
Okay, so one of the three of us would have to direct it.
Mr. Mayor, I have another question on the lines that you're going, which is if the impacts cannot be mitigated and they do an environmental, then in a scenario like this, and that's the only property there, there's a couple of other properties right next to it, what happens in that case?
Same thing.
If the impacts cannot be mitigated, then the council would have to, prepare an EIR and do if it wanted to approve the project, approve the CP.
Overriding
basically, would have to do
conditions.
overriding
With
statement of
overriding
finding, with
conditions.
overriding
We
considerations.
know the impact, we don't care.
So it's
Then
not
take
saying that
the-
you don't care. It's just saying
Well,
that you believe that.
Okay,
If I can, there could be mitigation measures taken that won't completely resolve the impacts, but in your mind get you far enough down the road that you're willing to
either
approve
the
the
oak tree
project.
is there or the oak tree is gone. It's a black and white issue. You're not going to kind of take out the oak tree, not with the widening and the utilities.
Well, what I'm trying to understand is at one point, let's not kid ourselves. If the oak trees are going to be taken out, we either have to let the guy or those people who own the rest of them either develop it or just tell them no, which at that point, if we say no, then it becomes a taking.
No, not in this case.
Not necessarily. I mean, you'd have to look again at all the factors that Mr. Howard explained the last time, that it goes to the issue of, did the homeowner who purchased the property have the expectation, given the demands on that property and the challenges, I guess, of developing that property, have an expectation that they were going to be able to develop that property. And I think there's some pretty strong case law that it wouldn't be taken, given what's out there on the site.
What happens after Prop 90 passes?
That's a good question, but I would suspect, again, because property owner
So
doesn't
subject
have...
to a CUP.
Right. Property owner, what the language in our code says now is that you can develop it subject to a CP, and it means it may be permitted subject to a CP. And our position is, and the position that I think most people are taking, is that if you need a CUP to do something, you don't have a right to do it, like a constitutional right to build that use.
And if I can add, Mr. Mayor, 90 doesn't negate CEQA.
Correct.
So you still have the environmental issues on any project. Has to be complied with. Okay, this is more of a brainstorm, and by no means am I proposing it, so hold on to your pacemakers. What would happen if we were to abandon Ramsey Drive, turn that into a private road, negating the necessity for the 20-foot grading with curbs and gutters? Find an overriding what's the terminology?
Overriding consideration.
Overriding consideration to permit a septic tank on those homes in that area. Therefore, you wouldn't be digging up the street, and you could call yourself La Cañada.
Why don't we just let them
I
annex
hope they're
themselves
not
to
listening.
Alcaniata?
Who wants to answer? I saw three faces.
I'll just add
Take
one.
out the road because you got other.
You want to
properties.
try, Steve?
Well, this,
Turn it to a private
Mr. Mayor, Councilmember
septic tanks?
Najarian, the septic tank issue would not fly under the water board conditions and the current stormwater laws. We would not be able to put in a new septic tank system. In fact, we're
What about
being
your
asked
idea?
to do whatever we can to remove the existing.
If it just holds it without dissipating it into the groundwater?
No.
Or they won't let you.
No,
Okay.
that wouldn't.
How about that kills that. How about the abandonment of Ramsey, turning into a private
I
drive?
think the zoning code doesn't allow you to permit, I'm just looking at it here as I speak, but it doesn't allow you to put a house on a private street. It has to be with access to a public street. And I'll have to look at this. I've never really studied it.
No.
The definition of a lot.
Well, it has to have
Says
access to a public. You can do it through an
access to
easement.
public
and such,
street.
Yeah,
but
but
I think
they'll
the more
still have an
I think
access
the more
to it. It just
you
will be through a private road.
You can have private streets,
Yeah,
but
I think the more mechanical issue
seems-
is
I've seen
getting all the
flag lots
property owners.
all over Glendale.
Mr. Mayor, it seems to me the bigger question is whether or not the
Says
city would be in a
abutting.
position of being able to vacate the street. You'd need to have the consent of all of the property owners, or you'd have another issue on your hands.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
Mr. Mayor.
you need to make those findings that it's no
Yes,
longer necessary.
Mr. City Engineer.
Agree.
If I may add to Mr. Starboard's comments, the proposal to vacate the street would mean half the street would go to the property owners on the south side and half to the north side.
That's right.
They would have to reach an agreement as to
Other
its use.
center line of the right-of-way, wherever that is.
It has to be abutting a public street, so it would be a flag lot, but then you'd have the problem of the distance and the...
So long as it's within 600 feet.
We tried.
I'll have to check the subdivision code.
That's
on that. I
600
don't
feet.
have it with me.
Wait, we can cut this short. Might make all these cars irrelevant tonight. We would have to take a motion first here to reconsider, to get it back, to do an adequate environmental document before we can really move on, correct?
Well, I don't. Again, Mr. Mayor, I don't know if it would be a motion to reconsider because, again, you do a reconsideration motion at the same meeting. If the direction of the council or the desire of the council is to conduct further environmental study, it would just be a motion to direct us to bring back a motion to rescind the motion that we adopted and conduct that further environmental study.
Okay, and so what would we be
Anybody
doing
make-
here tonight? Anything?
Well,
Mr. Mayor, let's understand
Yes.
what motion you'd be adopting. Would it be the motion certifying the mitigated neg deck previously? And in which case they've not adopted any findings at this point, so their approval of the development really hasn't been consummated yet. Would the motion be to rescind the certification of the neg deck, mitigated neg deck previously and send it back for further review?
Yes, although because that motion is not, because that you would need to bring back that motion at a subsequent meeting. I think the direction, we would just need a motion to bring back a motion to rescind the prior approval as well as conduct an environmental study.
If we do that, then what do we have else to do here tonight? Nothing, right?
If that's the direction, I think you probably want to take public comment. Anybody who wants to speak on whether to make that on that motion.
On that motion only,
Correct.
the motion of reconsideration. May I ask, is either of my colleagues willing to put up a motion to reconsider? We're the prevailing side.
Did last time we approve the neg deck?
Yeah, we must have.
I think they're conferring and checking to see who actually approved the mitigated neg deck.
I think the ZA would have done it when she
Yeah,
approved the
I think
original
Okay.
CUP.
So it wasn't a council action.
So it wasn't a
for
council
mitigated.
action.
So there's a
anyways.
neg deck already there, so we can't just,
Well, again, I think evidence has been presented that it may not have been sufficient, and I think
So we just need a motion just to send it back. Is that
Yes.
what we need?
a motion to direct the city attorney to bring back a motion to rescind the prior motion, as well as direct staff to conduct further environmental analysis of the project.
Okay,
That gets you there.
that goes back to the zoning administrator for the environmental.
Yeah, but I would say, even though the ZA has approved the environmental, if it's not adequate, it's not adequate, and so I think
But it would
we-
go back to
both-
her for consideration of that fact.
I would
Well-
think you would say that based on new information presented, it's
Correct.
not adequate.
Okay. Okay, so I think we know where we have to go. Of all these people here, anybody want to speak only to the reconsideration action only? Okay, is there somebody want to make a motion for reconsideration? Because if we don't, where are we?
Again,
Well, the motion would be to direct staff to prepare a motion for reconsideration to come back to you, along with, in that motion, additional environmental review.
correct.
Is there,
So tonight is not the action to reconsider, it's just whether
Yeah,
to send
a
that
motion
direction to the
to-
staff, right?
okay,
A motion to,
either my colleagues, or any of my colleagues in this case, or just at the prevailing side?
because it's not the motion to rescind,
Yes.
that would be the next
Anybody.
time. It could be any of you.
Is
Okay, I'll
anybody?
make that motion as suggested
Okay.
by
Is there
Mr. Garcia.
Is there a second? Who's next?
second.
Oh, second, okay. Roll call.
Council members Manukian, Najarian,
Yes.
Montero,
Yes.
Yusefian,
Aye.
Mayor Weaver.
All right. Okay, thank you, folks. Save the rest of your day. Enjoy the rest of your evening.
I could bring that back next.
Here, Artie, you can have the cards. What is next, please?
Is there any written communication or new business?
No? Not that I see.
Move to adjourn.
Stand adjourned at 9:22 p.m.